Chapter 143. Oh, that's right. I didn't expect someone to know the answer to this question. How interesting. The dark crow cackled. Gahan actually got it right. Could the answer really be Shuri Guang, Yu Nu Qing, Chong Yi, and Yua? Of course not. Although there were many mistakes in the historical data recovered by Bat, things like the four beauties couldn't be wrong. Gohan's final answer was Shuri Guang, Wang Zhaojun, Diao Chan, and Yang Yuan. The standard correct answer. However, Gahan had only heard of Shuri Guang and Yang Yuan before entering this instance dungeon. He had never heard of Wang Zhaojun and Diao Chan. How did he know the correct answer? This was all thanks to King Yu. Just as Gahan was about to give the wrong answer to the Dark Crow, King Yu suddenly said, "Someone said that she sure isn't as beautiful as Yang Yuan." Just this one sentence made Gahan swallow his answer in an instant. He then asked King Yu in a gentle tone, "King Yu, who is that someone? And who is Yang Yuan?" That someone is naturally that fleeting calendar who got stabbed by you. All right, you guys call him Kinzu now. This was the second time King Yu took the initiative to mention Kinzu. Last time, King Yu was indignant at the injustice and wanted to take revenge for Kinzu. This time, he was talking about Kinzu in a mocking tone. Back when I was with Fleeting Calendar, he was always thinking about meeting all four of the four great beauties of Huaxia. He even planned to get intimate with all four of them. After talking about them for so long, I've memorized their names. King Yu's words were reasonable. The Sword Ancestor was a 15-year-old human before the Great Calamity. The historical knowledge he knew would definitely crush Gahan by a dozen times and be several hundred times more accurate. Since these words had come from the Sword Ancestor, they would definitely not be wrong, provided that King Yu's brain did not remember wrongly. As a result, Gahan decided to trust the Dark Crow. When Gahan heard that his answer was correct, he couldn't help but sigh in relief. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have needed to think about it. Wouldn't it have been better to just ask the Dark Crow? After Gahan answered, the water level in the room quickly dropped. Unexpectedly, the water level in this room was frighteningly deep. Gahan felt that he had descended at least 50 meters. When the water finally receded, Gahan arrived at the last room of the exam. Caw, I didn't expect a human like you to get to the 10th question and only get one wrong. You really have some ability. I hope you can answer the last question correctly. The Dark Crow cawed and flapped its wings as it flew down. This question is a realistic question. The question is, the Dark Crow dragged out its unpleasant voice. After a while, it said, "Guess it yourself." After leaving behind this elusive sentence, the Dark Crow disappeared once again. Following its disappearance, the entire room began to tremble. A ray of sunlight shone down from the roof. At the same time, a hole opened up in the wooden floor. Trees, soldiers, war horses, houses, rockery, and commoners rose from the ground. At the center of the room, a huge decorated archway rose up. These changes came very suddenly and ended very quickly. When everything quietened down, Gahan took a closer look and found that the things that rose up were all made of wood. The soldiers, war horses, houses, rockery, and commoners were all carved out of wood. The entire room's scenery was also made of wood. Then, in a small area of a few dozen square meters around him, for walls connected to various chairs and furniture rose up. Gahan felt as if he had arrived at the center of a puppet theater. There were all kinds of puppets around him. After taking a closer look, Gahan found that he was wearing a bright yellow dragon robe. He was surrounded by soldiers and war horses. Behind him was a group of tall and burly guards, but they were dressed very shabbily. There were also two eccentric men on both sides. This theater seemed to be performing a puppet show of war, and he had also become a member of the puppet show. The only difference was that he was a living person, while the ones acting with him were all puppets. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty, it's bad, Your Majesty." While Gahan was wondering what the Dark Crow was up to, the puppet show had already begun. "Your Majesty?" In some of the surviving period dramas before the apocalypse, this is how the ancient emperors are called. Could it be that I'm really playing the role of an emperor, and the people around me are the legendary eunuchs? Since the Dark Crow wanted him to play the role of an emperor, then he would play it. He wanted to see what the Dark Crow was selling. "What's the matter?" Gahan asked, imitating the tone of the emperor in the TV series. Your Majesty, it's bad. The soldiers outside are all noisy. They're going to rebel. Gahan carefully looked at the puppet that came to report the news. The expression on its face was exquisite, and it could constantly make all kinds of subtle changes, perfectly reflecting the panicked expression. Gahan had to admit that this puppet had reached the peak of perfection. If it weren't for the lines of wood on their bodies that couldn't be hidden, and the strong smell of rotten wood coming from their bodies, Gahan would really think that they were real people. Is this the power of Liu Ban? To be able to make wood to such an extent, it's really terrifying. Gahan inexplicably felt a little more respect for the old man. Why are they so noisy? What's the situation now? Gahan continued to ask. Your Majesty, those soldiers killed Yang Xianghua and are now coming to the relay station. They also want to kill you. The messenger was obviously panicking. Rebellion? They killed the prime minister, and now they want to kill me. Could it be that I'm now a ruler who's at the end of the road? Gahan carefully thought about the plot without saying a word. In the eyes of others, it looked like he was scared silly and couldn't make a decision. Nonsense. You're just trying to scare us. Your Majesty is wise and mighty and treats people kindly, and the soldiers are all loyal. How could they harm Your Majesty? You must be panicking and heard the wrong news, Your Majesty. Your Majesty, please sit here and let this old servant find out the news for you. At that moment, the eunuch puppet standing next to Gahan scolded the messenger in an imposing manner that was very inconsistent with his status as a eunuch. Go, go. Gahan nodded in agreement. So the eunuch puppet walked out of the small room. After a while, he returned to the room. As soon as he came back, he kicked the messenger puppet to the ground with a smile on his face. Your Majesty, you're wrong. You're wrong. This idiot from Tian Sha didn't even find out the news and cause Your Majesty to be alarmed. Oh, so you're saying that no one rebelled? Gahan smiled. Your Majesty, someone rebelled, but the rebels have been killed by Your Majesty's loyal soldiers. Now the soldiers are rushing here to ask for Your Majesty's reward. The eunuch puppet waved his hand and pointed to the door. Your Majesty, the soldiers are already waiting outside. Shouldn't you go out and reward them, well, to appease the soldiers? The eunuch's report was confusing. How could there be soldiers who dared to surround the emperor's residence without the emperor's summons? It was definitely not as simple as this eunuch made out to be. Since this eunuch asked me to go out, then I'll go out and take a look. I won't be able to find out anything by staying in this small room. Therefore, Gahan strode out of the small room. When he walked out of the room, he saw hundreds and thousands of wooden puppets standing at the door. Their eyes were fixed on him, as if they wanted to see something from his face. Soldiers, His Majesty has personally come out to see you. Why aren't you kneeling and greeting His Majesty? The eunuch saw that the situation was in a deadlock and immediately shouted to the soldiers. The soldiers suddenly came to a realization and knelt in front of Gahan. Your subjects greet Your Majesty. Long live His Majesty. Hundreds and thousands of people knelt in front of him, bowed their heads to the ground, and shouted in unison. This made Gahan feel a little smug, and he thought that a real man should be like this. Dispense with the formalities and rise. Soldiers, you have worked hard. I heard that you have quelled the rebellion and come to ask for rewards. I wonder whose rebellion you have quelled. Gahan looked at the puppet soldiers below with a smile. Your Majesty, the traitorous minister Yang Guozhong attempted to rebel and was discovered by the soldiers. He has been killed. This traitorous minister used to abuse his power and plunder the people's wealth. The people of the Tang Empire hate him to the bone. Today he has been executed. The one who spoke was a guy in a mighty armor. He looked different from the other soldiers and should be a general. Yang Guozhong, the Tang Empire. These two names lingered in Gahan's mind, which made Gahan roughly understand what kind of plot he was in. This should be the Tang Empire in the Middle Ages. He was playing the role of Emperor Xuanzong of Tang, Li Longji, who was killed by the Ungshi Rebellion and escaped from Chang'an. Chapter 144. The history of the Tang dynasty was relatively complete in the year 3001. It was probably because the Tang dynasty was the most prosperous dynasty in Huaxia. The only dynasty with more information than the Tang dynasty was the Qing dynasty. Guhan didn't understand why the Qing dynasty could preserve more information than the Tang dynasty. As a historical expert, Guhan understood his situation when he heard that Yang Guozhong had been killed. He was playing the role of Emperor Xuanzong of Tang, Li Longji, and Yang Guozhong was the woman he loved the most, Yang Yuhuan, the brother of Yang Guifei, one of the four beauties and the prime minister he trusted the most. Now, in Lushan, the military governor of the three towns of Hudong, Pinglu, and Fanyang, who he trusted the most, had rebelled. Moreover, the rebel army was very ferocious and had even threatened the capital, Chang'an. Emperor Xuanzong of Tang was in a panic, so he fled to Sichuan with his favorite Yang Guifei. When they reached Maui Station, the army rebelled, killed Yang Guozhong, and threatened him. If Guhan wasn't wrong, they would force him to kill Yang Yuhuan. As expected, the mighty general puppet knelt in front of him and begged, "Your Majesty, Yang Guozhong was killed for his treason. Yang Guifei shouldn't serve you anymore. Your subject, Chen Xuanli, begs your Majesty to kill Yang Yuhuan to appease the hearts of the people." Chen Xuanli said that he wanted to appease the hearts of the people, but he actually wanted to appease himself and the soldiers who killed Yang Guozhong. They killed Yang Guozhong, the brother of Emperor Xuanzong of Tang's beloved woman, Yang Yuhuan. Emperor Xuanzong of Tang might not punish him for his own life, but if he didn't kill Yang Yuhuan, once Emperor Xuanzong of Tang reached a safe place, Yang Yuhuan would probably ask him to kill them to avenge Yang Guozhong. Therefore, Chen Xuanli and his people had to kill Yang Yuhuan to prevent future troubles. In history, Emperor Xuanzong of Tang hesitated for a long time when faced with Chen Xuanli's request. He kept saying things like, "I need to think about it. I will banish her to the cold palace. Yang Yuhuan's crime doesn't warrant death." It could be said that in that situation, Tang Xuanzong had to kill Yang Yuhuan. Otherwise, the soldiers who had already killed Yang Guozhong would feel uneasy. If they weren't careful, they might even kill Tang Xuanzong to avoid future revenge. Didn't Tang Xuanzong know that he had to kill Yang Yuhuan? Of course, he knew that. He just couldn't bear to kill the woman he loved the most, one of the four great beauties of China. However, Guhan was willing. Emperor Xuanzong's love for Yang Yuhuan had nothing to do with Guhan. Guhan didn't have the time to be like Emperor Xuanzong, constantly evading the responsibility. After hesitating for a while, Guhan directly answered Chen Xuanli, "All right, I agree. I will demote Yang Yuhuan to a commoner right now. You will immediately go and kill her to bring justice to the world." "Yes, Your Majesty." Chen Xuanli immediately kowtowed in excitement. Since Guhan agreed to kill Yang Yuhuan so easily and without hesitation, it meant that in His Majesty's heart, she was only a good-looking toy. This way, His Majesty probably wouldn't care about him killing Yang Guozhong. Chen Xuanli immediately led a group of soldiers and rushed into the relay station behind Guhan. The rest of the soldiers who were kneeling outside also heaved a sigh of relief, and the tense atmosphere in the entire scene also relaxed. Although these soldiers were puppets, they had an aura that was even more solid than humans. Even Guhan couldn't handle this aura. He praised Liu Ban's technique again. "Your Majesty, save me. Your Majesty, Yuhuan doesn't want to die. Yuhuan wants to accompany Your Majesty for the rest of her life. Your Majesty, please save Yuhuan." Guhan heard a sad and moving voice behind him. The owner of this voice should be Yang Yuhuan. Compared to Chen Xuanli, the eunuchs, and the other puppets, Yang Yuhuan's voice was exactly the same as King Yu's. Wait, it was exactly the same as King Yu's. Guhan turned around abruptly and saw a group of puppet soldiers dragging a woman. One of the strongest soldiers was holding a piece of white silk in his hand and was trying to wrap it around the woman's neck. It seemed like he was planning to strangle the woman to death. Thinking about it, it was a bit funny. How could puppets be strangled to death? Their necks were made of wood. However, Guhan couldn't laugh because that woman wasn't a puppet, but a real woman. Furthermore, she looked exactly the same as his King Yu. It was completely the same. That was definitely a real King Yu and not a fake puppet. "King Yu, are you there? King Yu?" Guhan called King Yu through the sword mark, but there was no response. Guhan touched the sword hilt on his back. It was empty. He didn't know when it had disappeared. Stop! Guhan's sudden roar stunned all the puppets. The puppets that were grabbing Yuan also stopped their hands. Let me ask you, are you King Yu or Yang Yuan? Guhan pointed at the woman that looked exactly the same as King Yu. He didn't know if this woman was the King Yu who disappeared behind him. Your Majesty, I'm Yuan. I'm your most beloved Yuan. Yang Yuan didn't know how, but she broke free from the 3 soldiers that were grabbing her. Then, she stumbled all the way behind Guhan and tightly hugged his waist. Your Majesty, Yuan knows that your Majesty can't bear to part with Yuan. You can't bear to part with Yuan. Your Majesty, Chun Xuanli heavily knelt in front of Guhan and sincerely said, Your Majesty, please put down your personal feelings and think about the hearts of the army and the people. Your Majesty, Yang Yuan must die. She must be killed. Otherwise, the hearts of the army will not be at ease, Your Majesty. As if to prove Chun Xuanli's words, the thousands of puppet soldiers who were kneeling on the ground suddenly raised their heads and looked at Guhan in unison. Their eyes were filled with determination, a determination that if they did not kill Yang Yuan, they would rebel against their superiors. Your Majesty, Yang Yuan, who looked exactly like King Yu, was frightened by this aura and screamed. She hugged Guhan's waist even tighter. Get up. Guhan stopped Yang Yuan and carried her in front of him. Guhan's hands wandered around Yang Yuan's body. This was a pair of soft, living bodies, not a piece of wood. Your Majesty, Yuan's body softly stuck to Guhan's chest. Her body fragrance floated into Guhan's nose. Even his smell was exactly the same as King Yu's. I know, you're not King Yu. Guhan straightened Yuan's body and then distanced himself from her. King Yu will never lean against my chest. Also, Guhan pressed his hand on the crack between Yuan's buttocks. Also, I can't pull out a sword hilt here. Your Majesty, are you still going to give up on Yuan and let them kill her? Yuan looked at Guhan with teary eyes. I won't. Guhan sighed. He placed Yuan on the ground and had her sit properly. Guhan didn't understand what was wrong with him. Since he knew Yuan wasn't King Yu, why did he still go up? Was he still the same person who could kill Fleeting Calendar without hesitation 2 weeks ago? Was he still the same person who could kill Fleeting Calendar with a single slash? When did he have a woman's heart? Your Majesty, please reconsider. Chun Xuanli kowtowed heavily on the ground when he heard Guhan's words. Your Majesty, please reconsider. 1,000 puppets spoke in unison. Their voices were so loud that they seemed to be able to shake the 9 heavens. Guhan drew his Qingbin sword and placed it in front of Yuan. There's no need to reconsider, or else I'll really regret it. If you want to kill her, kill me first. After saying this, Guhan suddenly burst into laughter, so it feels pretty good to say such immature lines. Your Majesty, sorry for the offense. Seeing that Guhan had made up his mind, Qin Xuanli kowtowed to Guhan one last time and suddenly stood up. 1,000 bull guards, raise your spears. Send the imperial concubine on her way. Crash! 1,000 soldiers raised their wooden spears at the same time and aimed at Guhan and King Yu behind him. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword of the abyss. Guhan didn't waste any words. 5 rays of sword chi shot out from his Qingpin sword and swept towards the neatly arranged puppets like a long whip. The might of sword of the abyss sword chi was terrifying. A few dozen puppets were hit by the sword chi and turned into a pile of splinters on the ground. However, a few dozen puppets were undoubtedly not enough to deal with 1,000 soldiers. Kill! The 1,000 bull guards weren't afraid of the sword chi. They quickly charged in front of Guhan and stabbed at Guhan with their spears. Guhan raised his Qingpin sword and blocked 7 or 8 spears in front of him. However, 4 or 5 spears stabbed at Guhan's back. Go to hell! Guhan turned around and chopped the 2 puppets behind him into pieces. However, a few more spears came stabbing towards him. Although Guhan's swordsmanship was unparalleled, he was helpless against an army that could kill any martial arts expert. His sword essence was only enough for Sword of the Abyss to release 25 rays of sword chi. Just now, 5 rays had only killed a few dozen. Even if it was multiplied by 5 times, it would at most kill 200. Against this army, it was like trying to put out a cart of firewood with a cup of water. Moreover, at this time, Gahan's sword mark was Qingpin, so his physique was naturally that of an ancient sword Qingpin. If Gohan had King Yu's physique, he could drag it out for 1 or 2 hours and slowly finish off these puppets. However, his current physique was only a few times stronger than a mortal's. Let alone an hour, even 5 minutes of intense battle would be too much for Gohan's body. Chapter 145. Thousand Bull Guard. Fight to the death. The Thousand Bull Guard was worthy of being the elite force that protected the great Tang Emperor. Even when fighting against their master, they were still able to maintain an extremely complete formation and formidable fighting strength. It was hard to believe that such an army would be scared into fleeing by the Enlushan army, which they hadn't even caught sight of yet. No matter how powerful an opponent was, Gahan was confident that he could rely on his movement technique and swordsmanship to toy with them. But when fighting against an orderly army, Gahan's swordsmanship wasn't enough. This was the first time Gahan had felt despair. The Thousand Bull Guards formation was simply too tight. Even though Gahan had already slaughtered more than 100 puppets, the remaining puppets were still fearlessly charging at Gahan. Graceful movement techniques and peerless swordsmanship were all meaningless against an entire army. The simultaneous attacks of several dozen puppets put Gahan under attack from both sides. If only I could use the sword rend. Gahan was somewhat unwilling. The sword rend was a move of the 9 swords of the mysterious heaven that was specifically used to fight against armies. Each move was an area of effect attack, and it was much more effective against these puppets than a pure sword chi, like the Sword of the Abyss. Thousand Bull Guard, Hawk Formation. Chun Xuanli, who was commanding the army, gave the order to change the formation. The entire army instantly changed from the originally loose formation to the extremely powerful Hawk Formation. The pressure that Gahan faced instantly increased by more than several times. Several dozen seconds later, Gahan's body suddenly rippled and then shattered. System notice. Player Gahan, your personal shield has shattered. Time to reset. 30 seconds. Under the assault, the personal shield that had come from Qingpin finally couldn't bear the pressure and shattered. This meant that Gahan had to use his own body to withstand the attacks of the dozen wooden spears. Damn it, don't look down on these spears just because they were wooden spears. Imagine a dozen or so wooden spears stabbing into your stomach at the full speed of a devilish brat. That kind of numbing feeling on your back, and you'll know what kind of situation you're in. He didn't need to hit it too many times. He only needed to hit it 40 to 50 times. Even with the buff from the poor sword, Gahan would still die immediately. Therefore, Gahan couldn't let the wooden spear hit him. Sword of the Abyss. Another 3-sword chi swept around Gahan like a whirlwind, shredding the dozens of IE puppets around Gahan to pieces. Gahan also took this opportunity to clear a gap. Let's go. He picked up Yang Yuan, who was behind him, and leaped into the air. Then, he used the heads of the puppet soldiers as plum blossom stakes, stepping on them one by one in an attempt to escape the encirclement. Your Majesty, please kill Yang Yuan. Before Gahan could take a few steps, 5 wooden spears suddenly appeared in front of Gahan in a fish-scale formation. I can't dodge. Facing 5 wooden spears, Gahan, who could even dodge the attacks of U-level Yuan Ko and Zionada, actually thought that he couldn't dodge them. If Gahan had enough sword chi, he could use Sword of the Abyss to defend against the 5 wooden spears. However, the sword chi in Gahan's body was only enough to release the last 3 Sword of the Abyss. How could he have enough to use Sword of the Abyss? Although Gahan tried his best to dodge, one of the wooden spears hit Gahan's abdomen. An overwhelming pain instantly spread throughout Gahan's body. He could no longer run on the heads of the puppets and fell to the ground. Then he was instantly suppressed by the dozens of wooden spears of the surrounding puppets. Your Majesty, I deserve to die 10,000 times. Chun Xuanli slowly walked in front of Gahan. The 5 wooden spears that Gohan couldn't dodge just now came from his hands. Your Majesty, I beg your Majesty again to hand Yang Yuhuan over to me so that I can kill her as an apology to the world. Hee hee, you're just a puppet. Gohan sneered and spun the Qingpin sword in his hand. The last 3 sword energies rose from the ground and directly rushed towards Chun Xuanli, who was beside Gohan. At this distance, Gohan was confident that Chun Xuanli wouldn't be able to dodge his sword energies. Indeed, Chun Xuanli did not dodge, or rather, he did not dodge at all. He allowed the sword cheese to slash his puppet body. But unlike the soldier puppets that were shattered by the sword cheese, the 3 sword cheese only left capsule-sized scratches on Chun Xuanli's body. They did not cause any fatal damage to Chun Xuanli. I should have thought of this. Since you're a puppet general, the materials used to make your body should be different from those small fish. Gohan sighed. He had used up the last bit of sword energy in his body and was pressed against the ground by several dozen puppets. He couldn't escape. Your Majesty, I ask that you issue a decree to execute Yang Yuhuan and restore justice to the people of the world. Even though the Emperor Gohan was pressed to the ground like a dog, Chun Xuanli still very respectfully knelt in front of Gohan and begged Gohan to kill Yang Yuhuan. I ask that your Majesty issue a decree to execute Yang Yuhuan and restore justice to the world. The puppet soldiers that had just been fighting to the death with Gohan also knelt together with their general and begged Gohan to issue a decree to execute Yang Yuhuan. Li Longji, Yang Yuhuan has committed all sorts of evil and is not tolerated by the heavenly Tao. She should be executed. Don't disregard the heavens and ruin the destiny of your great Tang. Tens of thousands of rays of light suddenly descended from the bright sky. There were celestial maidens dancing in the air, colorful lotuses bursting forth, and endless Sanskrit shuttling back and forth. Good. Now even the gods of the heavens had appeared and begged Gohan to kill Yang Yuhuan. This scene was so imposing that even the most staunch of men would find it hard to suppress the fear in their hearts. I refuse. Gohan's eyebrows rose. You're just a bunch of puppets. She's just a puppet. How could I, the military governor, listen to the orders of a bunch of puppets like you? Do you think that you can confuse me with this flawed play? Gohan raised the Qingpin sword. Although he was on the ground, he still kept the tip of the sword aimed at Chun Xuanli's head. We issue a decree that Chun Xuanli deceived the sovereign and defied his superiors and should be executed. We issue a decree that the entire 1,000 Bull Guard is a traitor and should be executed. Chun Xuanli and the group of soldiers were slapped in the face with 2 resounding words. Chun Xuanli's unchanging scowl finally had a strange change. Your Majesty, have a safe journey. A wooden spear heavily struck Gohan's temple, and Gohan instantly fainted. When Gohan woke up again, he had already returned to the classroom from which he had set off. He was sitting alone on a chair, and there was no one around him. Junior, you're awake. The dark crow suddenly flew down from the lectern and landed on Gohan's desk. However, this time, the dark crow's voice wasn't that hoarse voice of a crow, but that of Lu Ban's. Are you Senior Lu Ban? Gohan greeted the dark crow with a fist. The dungeons of the game were adapted from real history and then partially processed. In other words, the fantastic scenes that Gohan had just experienced were personally experienced by the group of sword-bearers who had really saved King Arthur hundreds of years ago. This Yuan Ko Lu Ban would definitely be able to create the uncanny labyrinth in reality. This level of carpentry was something that Gohan could never achieve in his lifetime. In the existing human data on Yuan Ko, Lu Ban was a very mysterious person. Many sword-bearers had met him, but they had never seen him fight, so it was impossible to judge Lu Ban's Yuan Ko level. However, in the data, there was a sentence about his level, at least universe level, Yuan Ko. It's me. Junior, you chose the most difficult history, but I didn't expect you to be the first one to come out. I couldn't help but be curious, so I came to see you and talk to you. How many years has it been since I've spoken to a real human? Although Lu Ban was using the Dark Crow's body, no expression could be seen on his face. However, that sense of desolation was completely revealed. Senior, are you not contaminated by filth? Gahan was a little puzzled at first. This Lu Ban did not seem to have any intention of killing him. Otherwise, he would have died without a doubt. There are many things that young people care about. My situation is a little special, so I won't tell you the details. I don't want you to cause me trouble. Lu Ban laughed heartily. However, you're quite capable despite your young age. You actually managed to injure my 18 wooden generals. TSK. These wooden generals were forged from the peach tree garden of immortality. Over the past 1,000 years, I've only managed to scrape a small amount from the Queen Mother of the West. You actually left 3 sword marks on me. Tell me, what should I do? Military Governor, my life is in the hands of Senior Lu Ban. I will do whatever Senior Lu Ban says. Military Governor has no complaints. Sly. Lu Ban laughed. I want you to answer me seriously. Do you think that Yuan is real or fake? Fake. Gahan answered honestly. I couldn't touch her sword hilt. Sword hilt? What do you mean? After all, Lu Ban rarely interacted with sword bearers and other Yuan Ko, so he did not know what a sword hilt was. So, Gahan explained the meaning of a sword hilt to Lu Ban. I see. This old man was careless. I will make another sword hilt next time. By the way, where's the hilt of your sword? On my butt. Gahan answered honestly without batting an eyelid. Lu Ban was speechless and did not know what to say. Then let me ask you again. Since you know that she is not your sword lady, why do you still protect her? Lu Ban's tone was full of gossip. My sword lady, even if she has the same face, I, military governor, will not allow any harm to be done to her. Chapter 146. Shameless, despicable person who wants you to protect me. Gahan said, my sword lady, even if she only has the same face, I, the military governor, will not allow any harm to be inflicted on her. After saying this, a person suddenly rose up from the side of Guhan's chair and used its sundera tone to complain about Guhan. This person was naturally none other than the missing sword lady, the king of Yu. Sorry, in order to play a little game with you, Your Highness King Yu, I invited Your Highness King Yu to the audience for a while. Your Highness King Yu saw your performance just now. Old man Lu Ban said in a naughty tone. Don't talk. I haven't settled the debt with you yet. Surname Gongshu? I, King Yu, am still your senior. Is this how you treat your senior? Hearing Gongshu Ban's words, King Yu felt angry. He immediately grabbed the dark crow's duck neck and said rudely, What? You know each other? Gahan didn't understand. King Yu proudly said, Of course I know him. This guy's real name is Gongshu Ban. He's a descendant of the Zhou royal family. He's 16 years younger than me. In the past, I even hugged him. Don't talk nonsense. Hearing King Yu's words, Lu Ban became anxious. This old man was born in the state of Lu, and you were born in the state of Yu. The two are thousands of miles apart. How could you hug this old man? That's right, that's right. King Yu waved his hand. This king invited your grandfather to supervise the construction of this king's palace. You were born a year ago, and my palace was just completed. You followed your grandfather back to the state of Lu. At that time, you were still young, so you don't remember. King Yu spoke with certainty. However, Lu Ban was born 16 years later than King Yu. Plus, he was just a computer simulation, so he only stored information about humans. Other than that, he didn't know anything else, so he couldn't refute King Yu's words. Also, this king remembers that I gave your grandfather a lot of wages. Why did you go to the state of Chu and help the people of Chu to become enemies with my state of Yu? The more King Yu spoke, the angrier he became. Because of those defensive weapons you developed, this king lost 30,000 people. Are you kidding me? That's 30,000 people we're talking about. The adult males of this king's Yu kingdom don't even add up to 300,000 people, and 1/10 of them died in your hands. This debt, this king still hasn't settled it with you. Cough, cough. Lu Ban coughed. Junior, your companion is almost done with his exam. I can't stay here any longer. I have one last thing to ask you. Please answer me truthfully. Senior, please speak. Gahan said sincerely. This old man can smell the scent of that unfilial son on you. Let me ask you, what relationship do you have with that MOD? Lu Ban's tone was extremely serious. It was clear that he attached great importance to this matter. MOD. I have nothing to do with him. Gohan was stunned at first, but he immediately remembered that although he had nothing to do with MOD, his Juzi sword was related to him. Senior, are you talking about this? Gohan took out the Juzi sword's mechanical bird from his multidimensional bag and handed it to Liu Ban for him to examine. Only then did Gohan notice that the Juzi sword's mechanical bird and Liu Ban's dark crow puppet were both wooden birds. Upon closer inspection, whether it was in appearance or workmanship, they were very similar. Only some details were different, as if they had been carved by the same master. Could it be that MOD and Liu Ban had some kind of relationship? I didn't expect it to really be that unfilial son of MOD's. Liu Ban let out a long sigh. Fine, since we're fated to meet, I'll let you have it. After saying this, the originally lively dark crow staggered and fell onto Gohan's table. Its eyes lost their liveliness. It became no different from a dead object. Junior, this old man will give this mechanical bird to you. Behave yourself, and don't tarnish the reputation of my Gongshu family. Liu Ban said no more after saying this. Give it to me, this mechanical bird. As soon as Gohan's hand touched the mechanical bird on the table, he suddenly heard such a system prompt. System prompt. You have discovered the Juzi sword's mechanical bird. Do you want to pick it up? Please note that this item is a dungeon quest item. Once you pick it up, you will become an in-name disciple of the Gongshu family, which will have a certain impact on your future. I will become an in-name disciple of the Gongshu family if I pick it up. Gohan suddenly felt that this routine was very familiar. It seemed that a few days ago, he had also experienced this kind of routine. That time, he ate a 6 revolutions immortal pill of Rin School and was forced to become an in-name disciple of Rin School. It was indeed a trap. Although he knew that it was a trap, Gohan still did not intend to give up. He already had 5 tokens of the Juzi sword, and this would be the 6th. Although he did not know how powerful the Juzi sword was, judging from the hidden information on the internet, this Juzi sword was definitely not simple. Even if he could not become his own sword maiden in the future, it would not be bad to give it to Song Hama, Liun Yinling, or sell it. Wait, why did I think of giving it to Liun Yinling? After Liu Ban left, only Gohan and King Yu were left in the classroom. Gohan had many questions about what had happened just now. He turned around and was about to ask King Yu something when he saw King Yu's face turn red. His body flashed and turned into a sword that was placed on the table. King Yu, can we talk properly? Gohan flicked the blade. How are we going to communicate like this? Why can't we communicate? Aren't I talking to you properly? King Yu said in Gohan's mind. Yes, his voice was transmitted directly into his mind. He was indeed speaking very nicely. As you wish. Gohan was not in the mood to argue with King Yu. He caressed the traces of time on both sides of King Yu's blade. King Yu, how many years has it been since you were born? About 3,500 years. Bastard, don't touch my body. Take your dirty hands off me. Interesting. Gohan caressed King Yu in her sword form. She had a reaction. Senior Liu Ban, are you familiar with him? Is he from the same generation as you? Of course, didn't I say that I'm 16 years older than him? That old fellow doesn't do anything good and only causes trouble for me. I want to stab him to death. King Yu said hatefully. In that case, you remember what happened in the past. You even remember what happened 3,000 years ago? You despicable person, why are you asking such nonsense? How can this king not remember what this king has experienced? King Yu was unhappy. This isn't nonsense, King Yu. Don't forget, we are in the game, and you are just a fragment of Her Highness consciousness. What do you mean? You despicable person, are you looking down on this king for being a fragment of consciousness? Hearing Gohan's words, King Yu instantly exploded. This despicable person actually looks down on me for being a fragment of consciousness. Does he not want me now that he has the straight child sword? In the blink of an eye, King Yu thought about many things. He thought very far, so far that he was forgotten by Gohan in his dimensional bag. Even after he died, he didn't look at him again. No, that's not what I meant. King Yu, I just wanted to say that as a fragment of consciousness, shouldn't you not have the memories of being a sword? When your main body splits out a fragment of consciousness, it should only retain the most basic personality and self-awareness. The rest of the memories, including those before and after the Great Calamity, shouldn't all exist. In reality, when sword ladies split off fragments of consciousness and store them in the game, they would purposely remove almost all of their memories. This was because they didn't like the sword bearers in the game. They would wantonly ask about their privacy. Not only would this make the sword ladies feel uncomfortable, but it would also make the sword bearers feel uncomfortable. Kinyu didn't say anything. After hearing Gahan's question, she suddenly realized that her situation wasn't right. She shouldn't remember Liu Ban, Chu, Shi Sure, and so many things. These weren't memories that a fragment of consciousness in the game should have. Then let me ask you again. Kinyu, do you remember those things before you went to the Wudong dungeon? Gohan asked again. I don't remember. Kinyu thought for a moment and replied. Don't misunderstand. It's not that I don't remember things before I went to the Wudong dungeon. It's that I don't remember things before I went to the Wudong dungeon. My brain is a mess right now. I can't understand anything at all. All right, then let me ask you again. Do you remember the memories of Kinzu and your other sword bearers clearly? I remember. My first sword bearer was Fleeting Year Calendar. Second, wait, who was my second sword bearer? You don't remember anything about your second sword bearer? Kinyu was silent for a moment. It's over. I've almost forgotten about Fleeting Year Calendar. There's a problem. There's a problem. Gahan muttered to herself. As a fragment of consciousness, Kinyu suddenly recovered her memories that she shouldn't have. However, her memories of the Great Calamity were very clear. After the Great Calamity, they gradually faded. Something must have gone wrong. Then, where did it go wrong? Guhan recalled 3 days ago when she jumped into the furnace and merged with Kinyu. Chapter 147. Gahan chatted with Kinyu in the classroom for dozens of minutes before the second person rose from under the floor. He was also unconscious. Looking at his tattered clothes and scars, he had probably been tortured. Unexpectedly, Gahan thought that the second person to finish answering the question would be Clever Pen. He didn't expect it to be Steel Centipede. Steel Centipede was unconscious on the chair for more than 10 seconds before he slowly woke up. The first thing he saw was Guhan, who was sitting quietly on the chair. He immediately asked in surprise, Hey, there's actually someone faster than Steel Centipede this time. The Steel Centipede was a little unhappy when he first saw Guhan, but he quickly became cheerful again. Aha, the Steel Centipede, am finally no longer at the bottom. Did you return to the classroom so quickly because you couldn't even answer a single question? Let me tell you, your Uncle Steel Centipede answered 4 questions today. This is Uncle Steel Centipede's crushing strength. Steel Centipede continued to speak proudly. In his opinion, only bad students would hand in their papers early because they couldn't answer a single question. However, Steel Centipede seemed to have forgotten that top students could also hand in their papers early because these questions were too easy. Hongyu appeared after Steel Centipede. Compared to Gahan and Steel Centipede, who were a little embarrassed when they returned, Hongyu looked fine. She came back the same way she went in, as if she didn't encounter any difficulties. After Hongyu were the Yu siblings. These 2 siblings, who were always together and had a 100% synchronization rate, still appeared in the classroom at the same time. How could they come back at the same time when they went to take an exam on 2 different subjects, physics and geography? It was really a little too magical. The last to arrive was Clever Pen, whom Gohan had high hopes for. When he came out, he was even more embarrassed than Steel Centipede. His hair was messy like a chicken's nest, and more than half of his clothes were torn. No one knew what happened to him in the dungeon. Hee, the juniors are back. What do you think of the results of the exam? Liu Ban's voice sounded again, but this time, it was not through the dark crow's body. Instead, it was through the loudspeaker in the classroom. 50 points. Steel Centipede raised his palm and shouted confidently. However, other than him, no one had the intention to predict their results. This student is very confident. If you want to learn more from him, raise your hand and answer the teacher's questions. Liu Ban praised Steel Centipede, making him smile. Ahem, we will announce the results now. We will start with the lowest score. Luban coughed and began to announce the results. First is Steelman Bullet. He answered the short answer questions correctly in the third, fourth, and ninth questions correctly. His mathematics score is a total of 40 points. Although he is still 10 points short of his predicted score, his courage in raising his hand and speaking is very commendable. Everyone should learn from him. Learn and learn. I'm last. Steel Centipede was annoyed when he heard that he was last. He pointed at Gahan's nose and said, "He came back earlier than me. He should be last." Steel Centipede's noise annoyed Luban. A dozen Gatling guns appeared from both sides of the room at the same time, pointing at Steel Centipede's head. Steel Centipede finally quieted down. "Next is you, military governor," Steel Centipede said after he calmed down. Unfortunately, Steel Centipede was destined to be disappointed. "Next is you, CU, physics multiple choice questions. You answer the first, second, sixth, seventh, and eighth questions correctly. Total score, 50 points. You Sikong, geography multiple choice questions. You answer the first, second, sixth, seventh, and eighth questions correctly. Total score, 50 points. The Yu siblings once again proved the amazing bond between them. Not only did they take the same time to answer the questions, but their scores were also the same. Even the correct questions were exactly the same. This was really strange. Now, the team's total score had accumulated to 140 points. As long as the three people behind them scored 20 points more than the three people in front, they would definitely pass the 350-point threshold. At the very least, they would not have to worry about being detained here and enduring a day and night of torture. In fact, passing the 350-point threshold was not a problem. Hong Yu and Magic Pen scores were much higher than the Yu siblings. At the very least, they had an equal score of 50 points. On the other hand, Guhan only got one multiple-choice question wrong. As for the short answer question at the end, whether it was correct or not had not been determined yet. Even if it was wrong, Guhan would definitely score around 70 to 80 points, so the cutoff of 350 points was definitely within his reach. It was just that they did not know what kind of hell difficulty test they would face in the 350-point threshold. There was no information about this in Magic Pen's previous dungeon information. The first time they had come to this stage, Steel Centipede had only scored 20 points, and the Guardian Planet, who was in charge of history, had only scored 0. As a result, the team hadn't even scored 350 points, and they had to endure this torture that no one wanted to recall. With this painful experience, Magic Pen and the others made up their minds. They would never take the middle road to face Luban again. Third place, Student Hong Yu, politics multiple choice questions. You got the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and ninth correct. Total score, 70 points. Congratulations, Student Hong Yu. You have passed the threshold. Hong Yu got 70 points, which meant that she was very close to getting 350 points. In fact, she was only 10 points away from the 400 points. It was not impossible for her to get 450 points to get to the second-tier university. So, the remaining question was who was in first place, Magic Pen or Military Governor. Before the results were announced, everyone took it for granted that Magic Pen should be in first place. But now that the Military Governor and Magic Pen were in last place, everyone began to wonder if the Military Governor would surpass Magic Pen. The second place is... Old Man Luban could tell that something was wrong with the atmosphere in the team. He deliberately kept everyone in suspense before announcing loudly. The second place is the Admiral History, 70 points for the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh multiple choice questions, and 30 points for the ninth short answer question. His total score is 100 points. Unbelievable, Gohan actually lost. Our main character had actually lost, and he had lost fair and square, without being tricked by the villain, nor had he eaten something bad beforehand, or the examiner being biased towards him. Guhan, our main character, had lost fair and square just like that. It was really unbelievable. Guhan's gaze turned to Magic Pen, and Magic Pen also happened to look at Gahan. He smiled slightly, and his smile was very happy. Yeah, Boss Magic Pen won. I said that Boss Magic Pen would definitely crush this stupid military governor. Steel Centipede laughed loudly. Shut up. I've already flipped through more than a dozen chapters. When did you say that Boss Magic Pen would definitely win against the military governor? Hong Yu's unexpected words were rebutted by Steel Centipede, causing Steel Centipede's face to turn green. First place, Magic Pen Lansong River, language multiple choice questions. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and 8 questions are all correct. Total score, 80 points. The 10th question of the short answer is correct. 40 points. Total score, 120 points. Magic Pen had actually answered the 10th question correctly. Of everyone present, except for Magic Pen, everyone else got the 10th question wrong. From Gahan's experience, it could be seen that the 10th question had the most points, and the test was also the trickiest and most difficult. For Magic Pen to actually answer the 10th question correctly, it was obvious that his attainments in language were ordinary. Although he lost to Magic Pen in terms of points, Gahan did not feel that it was unbearable. For the year 3001, history was a subject that was several times more difficult than language. Moreover, Gahan believed that as long as he followed the correct epic poem and ordered Chen Xuanli to kill Yang Yuhuan, he would be able to answer the 10th question correctly. The correct answer was already in Gahan's heart. It was not that he did not know how to answer it, but that he was unwilling to answer the seemingly correct answer. Juniors, your total score is 430 points. You barely passed the 3rd-tier university. Are you ready to face the more difficult test? Lu Ban said. The floor under everyone's feet cracked again. However, this time, everyone did not separate. Instead, they all landed in the same room. Juniors, the door to the altar is in this room. The key to open the door is also in this room. As long as you find the key and open the door, you can save the person you want to save. Good luck. After this sentence, Lu Ban's voice did not appear again in the entire dungeon. Be careful. This is our first time facing this level. We have no experience. Everyone, be on full alert. The entire room was completely dark without any light. Only Magic Pen's voice could be heard. Everyone, gather around me and gather together. Following the direction of Magic Pen's voice, Gahan and the others gradually gathered together. Now let's start the roll call. Steel Needle. Here. Military Governor. Here. UCU. Here. Yu Sikong. Here. Hong Yu. Hong Yu. The entire team was silent for a while. Captain, the team channel has been blocked. We can't contact Hong Yu through the team channel. I got it. Magic Pen let out a long sigh. Don't worry about Hong Yu for now. The most important thing now is to figure out our current situation. Do any of you have a lighting item in your dimensional pocket? The flashlight from before is with Hong Yu. Chapter 148. Boss, I still have a flashlight here. Yu Sikong took out a flashlight from her dimensional pocket and handed it to Magic Pen. Magic Pen pressed on the flashlight. Why didn't this flashlight light up? Sikong, why is this flashlight broken? Just as Magic Pen asked this question, he immediately realized that something was wrong. Although the game was a high imitation of the real world, it was impossible for game items to be inexplicably damaged. Magic Pen looked at the flashlight's attribute panel. There was no damage. Boss, my flashlight is broken too. Steel Centipede also took out a flashlight, but the result was the same as Yu Sitsong's. No light shot out. There's no need to look for a flashlight. I'm guessing that there's a magic circle here, a magic circle that can absorb all light. Gahan's voice suddenly sounded coldly. If I'm not wrong, this should be the Dark Knight Goddess Nyx's sect. There's a magic circle called the Dark Knight Vortex. I'm afraid we're in the Dark Knight Vortex right now. Dark Knight Vortex? If that's the case, then we're in big trouble. Magic Pen's expression could not be seen clearly in the darkness, but it must be very ugly. What evidence do you have to prove that this is the Dark Knight Vortex? It's simple. Take this. Gahan handed an item to Magic Pen. Magic Pen took the item and touched it with his hand. He immediately guessed the origin of the item. This is a lighter? That's right, it's a lighter. If the flashlight can break, then the flame can't damage it. You'll know once you try the flame, Gohan said in a deep voice. Then there was a click. This was the sound of a lighter being pressed. Sure enough, the darkness was still darkness, and no flame appeared. In order to confirm, Magic Pen placed his finger above the lighter and immediately felt a strong heat. The lighter was not broken. The flame was real, but the light produced by the flame had disappeared. All team members, immediately release your famed sword-level sword ladies into their sword lady forms. The enemy may launch a surprise attack on us at any time. After confirming that it was the Dark Knight Vortex, Magic Pen immediately gave the order. The team members released their sword ladies into their sword lady forms. However, the sparks of light that should have been present when the Sword Maiden was released were nowhere to be seen. This once again proved the existence of the Dark Knight Vortex. A few seconds later, countless fragrances appeared in the middle of this terrible mess of men, and the Sword Maidens were all freed. To Gohan's left, he could clearly feel a cold iron armor. It was Steel Centipede's sword mistress, Arendate. On the right, there was a body fragrance that was not very tall, but it smelled very sweet. It was so sweet that it made people feel like they were poisoned. This was ambergris, the unique scent of Yusitsong's sword lady. Reporting Captain. The military governor did not release his sword maiden. Steel Centipede, who was standing beside Gohan, noticed that Gohan hadn't released the sword maiden, so he immediately snitched to his captain. Military governor, this is a critical moment. I hope you won't forget your promise. You are now my chess piece. Magic Brush said coldly. I'm the sword master, trust me. Gohan replied confidently. I am more useful than King Yu. According to the information, the Dark Knight Vortex is a formation used by the believers of the goddess of Night Nyx in the Western Temple of Light. It can borrow the power of the goddess of Night Nyx to absorb all the light in the formation, causing this place to be in a state of eternal darkness. Magic Brush began to explain the Dark Knight Vortex to his teammates. Boss, if this is really the Dark Knight Vortex, then doesn't that mean that the Night, which might also be here? Steel Centipede's voice was trembling. He didn't expect that the reputation of a Night, which would make a big man like Steel Centipede feel afraid. It's not possible, it's definitely. Shadow Bearing is behind me. Halfway through his conversation with Steel Centipede, Magic Brush's voice suddenly became hurried. A gust of wind could be felt blowing past everyone, and after a moment, that gust of wind came back. Dear friend, sorry to let the Night Witch escape. This was a somewhat hoarse female voice. It sounded like the feeling of gravel rubbing against one's skin. This voice should be Magic Brush's sword mistress, Shadow Bearing Sword. It's very normal. Unless it's a spirit sword-level sword wielder, who else can catch a Night Witch trying to escape in the Dark Knight Vortex? Magic Brush didn't blame him, but instead comforted Shadow Bearing. Indeed, the difficulty of catching a Night Witch in the Dark Knight Vortex was similar to catching a small fish in the sea. Night Witch was the family of the goddess of Night Nyx. They were originally just mortals, but they were transformed into the Night Witch race by Nyx's power. The Night Witch race was the darling of the night. Their bodies were like ink, blending into the darkness of the night and then evolving into any possible form. This form could be a beautiful woman, a young child, a dog, a cat, a cloud of smoke, a wall, or even a dagger or a machine gun. As long as the Night Witch had enough magic power and enough analysis of the changing target, then they could transform. Although the Night Witch was only a flood dragon level Yuan Ko, with their physique, they were like fish in water in the dark. Fighting with the Night Witch in a place without any light was simply courting death. They're coming. Yusitsong's sword lady, who was standing on the right of Gohan, moved, and a crisp sword cry could be heard. This was Yusitsong's sword lady fighting with the Night Witch. In the pitch-black space, no enemies could be seen. Only the crisp sword cries could be heard. This kind of terrifying atmosphere would make everyone fall into madness. There's more. Gohan felt two more murderous intense, targeting the team. UCU's Mandarin Duck let out a delicate yell. He didn't know where she was, but she was fighting with the two new night witches. Not only that, Magic Brush's Sword Lady, Shadow Bearing, also charged out because there were two more murderous intents. This meant that there were already 5 night witches in the dark. Mandarin Duck, Shadow Bearing. These 3 sword ladies were worthy of being the top sword ladies among the famous swords. In a situation where they had completely lost their sight, they were actually unable to separate from the 5 night witches. For example, the current battle between Mandarin Duck, Shadow Bearing, was like asking a blind person to cut a fruit. This also proved that the 3 sword ladies' sword skills were very high. If you let King Yu fight like this, it would be a huge question whether he could even touch his opponent after 10 minutes. Here they come again. Another 3 sharp, murderous intents. This meant that 3 more night witches had joined the battle. If they joined in on one of the 3 sword ladies, then that sword lady would definitely not be able to hold on. It seemed like only Gahan had to do it himself. Guhan sniffed the source of the murderous intents. Halfway, he swept his King Yu's sword horizontally and used the space to block a dagger that suddenly appeared. Seeing that the attack was blocked, the dagger instantly dissipated into a cloud of smoke. But at the same time, behind Guhan, 2 more daggers formed and pierced towards Guhan's back. Guhan twisted his body and dodged the 2 fatal daggers. Immediately, the 2 daggers disappeared just like the previous one. You want to leave? Guhan snorted coldly and suddenly stabbed his armpit with his King Yu sword. He felt as if he had stabbed a ball of jelly. Then he heard a mournful scream. Guhan knew that his attack had hit its mark. Kill! 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 Gahan's hit seemed to have triggered some switch. More than 10 new murderous intents appeared at the same time. This meant that more than 10 night witches had appeared in the whirlpool of the night. These night witches ignored the sword ladies and Gahan, who were fighting with their clansmen, and directly targeted Wondrous Pen and the others who were standing in a circle. At this moment, other than Alandet, who was still by Steel Centipede's side, only a group of unarmed sword-bearers were left. One could imagine the terrifying damage a group of night witches would cause if they charged into the sword-bearers. Not everyone was like Gahan, who could cut fruit blindfolded. Against these terrifying night witches, even Wondrous Pen could only run for his life without the sword lady's protection. He had no ability to resist. Not good. Steel Centipede. Order Alandet to raise his shield. Wondrous Pen gave Steel Centipede the order almost at the same time the night witches charged at him. Alandet, raise your shield. Steel Centipede ordered, and a giant shield appeared on Alandet's wrist. Alandet raised it above his head, and all sorts of banging sounds could be heard. This was the sound of the night witches' weapons attacking Alandet's giant shield. This was Alandet's advanced skill, Round Table Giant Shield. Advanced skill, Round Table Giant Shield, consumes 1500 sword energy per second. Allows Alandet to raise the giant shield on his arm and absorb all damage within 10 square meters. Damage is reduced by 30%. Lasts for a maximum of 60 seconds. Cooldown of 3 minutes. Captain, Alandet can only last for 60 seconds. What should we do after 60 seconds? Steel Centipede asked anxiously. Why don't we use Double Sword Combination? We can kill these night witches in one move. Double Sword Lady was a skill that could only be used by double sword ladies. It was equivalent to using 2 ultimate skills at the same time. Its power was astonishing. Double Sword Combination was an area of effect skill. As long as it was used, it could instantly kill all the night witches. However, this was Wondrous Pen's final trump card. Double Sword Combination's cooldown was calculated in hours. Double Sword Combination's cooldown was a full 5 hours. Wondrous Pen still had great use for this skill. No, Wondrous Pen decisively refused. If we use our ultimate skill now, what should we do in a few hours? Chapter 149. It would be great if we could dispel this darkness. As long as there is no darkness, these night witches are no match for us sword ladies. Yu Sikong lowered her head and pondered. Boss, is there no way to dispel this night vortex? There is. Wondrous Pen nodded. If Mingwei was here, Her sunset sword's golden crow fire could restrain all darkness. This darkness, created by the magic formation, would not be able to stop the golden crow fire. Wondrous Pen said nothing. Mingwe was not here. Where would the golden crow fire come from to break this darkness? Then what about destroying this magic formation? As long as we destroy this magic formation, we can use our flashlights, right? Yu Sikong asked again. Yes, as long as we can destroy the magic formation, the lost light will naturally return. Wondrous Pen frowned, but I have only heard of this formation and have no research on it. I don't know where the eye of the formation is. Right now it's pitch black. I can't even tell north from south. Even if I know where the eye of the formation is, it will be very difficult to find it. And there is no other way? Yu Sikong could not help but feel discouraged. Her sister Yu very intimately leaned on her brother's back. Brother, there will be a way, brother. Wondrous Pen, I know where the eye of the formation is. Suddenly, Wondrous Pen heard the voice of the military governor. Where's the eye of the formation? Wondrous Pen asked. It's on the missing Hongyu. Gohan blocked a flying dagger. The night vortex must use human bodies to set up the formation and use the darkness in their hearts to absorb light. Therefore, the eye of the night vortex must be the human Hongyu. Right now, Hongyu is very likely trapped in a dream somewhere. As long as we save Hongyu, we can dispel this night vortex. Hearing Gohan's words, Wondrous Pen was shocked. He was the first to say that this was the night vortex magic formation. He was also the one to find the eye of the night vortex magic formation. This military governor should have a very good understanding of the night vortex. However, this was the first time they encountered the night vortex in an instance dungeon. It was impossible for him to prepare this in advance. He must have firmly memorized this information in the real world. What a terrifying fellow. No wonder he could clear the SSS Grade King of Yu Go Jin Instance Dungeon. Understood. What do you need us to do? Magic Brush came back to his senses. This military governor had said so much to him, so he must be hoping to get some help from him. Hongyu is in this room. I need to confirm her location. Do you have any way to confirm Hongyu's location? Gohan slashed at the jelly-like night witch again, but the night witch quickly turned into smoke and didn't suffer too much damage. Wondrous Brush and the others were stunned. Look for Hongyu's location. It was pitch black. How was he supposed to find it? We're not dogs. We don't have a nose of a dog and can smell the scent of red jade. Steel Centipede muttered and complained in his heart. But this time, Steel Centipede's ridicule played a crucial role. Dog nose. You seem to have thought of something. When I passed the physics exam, I received a mechanical dog. This thing kept showing that it was a mission item and could not be used, so I didn't pay attention to it. Is it useful? Mission item? Gohan was overjoyed when he heard this. How could a dungeon quest give a useless mission item? This mechanical dog must be the key to solving the Dark Knight Vortex dungeon. Siu, take out the mechanical dog and see if it can be used now. Gohan said loudly. Siu immediately took out the mechanical dog and was surprised to find that the red words indicating that it could not be used had disappeared and turned into green. It really can be used. As soon as Siu's mechanical dog was taken out, two pale flames flashed in its eyes. The flames weren't swallowed by the Dark Knight Vortex and still lit up. However, this pale flame could only let others see its existence, but it couldn't illuminate the surroundings. This is the undead ghost fire. Seeing the two flames, Magic Brush said thoughtfully, "No wonder the Dark Knight Vortex can't absorb it. How can the Dark Knight Vortex absorb this kind of soul-burning flame?" Under everyone's expectations, after the mechanical dog was used, it should immediately run and lead everyone to Hongyu's location. However, almost 10 seconds had passed, and there was still no movement from the mechanical dog. Captain Allendett's shield raising time is almost over. At this time, there were still more than 10 night witches surrounding everyone and attacking crazily. However, these attacks were all absorbed by Allendett's shield. Although these night witches' attacks were very high, the defense effect of Allendett's full body armor wasn't just for show. Even if there were 10 more night witches, without 10 minutes of continuous attacks, they wouldn't be able to break Alandet's shield. Passive skill, perfect full body armor. Any attack that can't pierce through Alandet's armor will have its damage halved on a shield. Any attack that can pierce through Alandet's armor will have its damage doubled on the shield. These Night Witch's attacks couldn't pierce through Alandet's armor. However, Alandet's shield raising time was limited. Once the shield raising skill disappeared, these attacks that didn't hurt Alandet would be able to kill Steel Centipede and the other sword wielders. Therefore, Magic Pen and the others didn't have enough American time to wait for this mechanical dog. However, after this mechanical dog was released, it stayed in place and didn't move at all. Could it be that Gahan had guessed wrong, and this mechanical dog's purpose wasn't here? Quick, take out 1 or 2 of Hong Yu's items. Anything that has Hong Yu's scent will do. Quick. Magic Pen was the quickest to react. It was a dog, so it had to first smell the target before it could start searching for it. Hong Yu's items? Everyone was stunned for a moment. They just remembered that they didn't seem to have Hong Yu's items on them, because Hong Yu never gave her things to others. Catch! Hearing Magic Pen's words, Gohan took out a silk handkerchief from his dimensional pocket and threw it accurately in front of the 2 pale flames. This silk handkerchief was what Hong Yu had given to Gahan to wipe his face before he entered the basement. He didn't expect it to come in handy at this time. Gahan threw it very accurately, right under the mechanical dog's nose. The mechanical dog sniffed hard and began to run in one direction. Go follow those 2 flames. Let's go. Magic Pen's tone was a little hurried. Everyone followed closely behind the 2 pale flames. From their current position, they ran for about 10 meters before the 2 flames finally stopped. Search the surroundings. Hong Yu should be here. As soon as Magic Pen's voice fell, Yu Sikong shouted excitedly. Found it. Hong Yu is here. Hong Yu is here. At this moment, Hong Yu was curled up like a baby and sitting on the ground in a deep coma. It seemed that she was indeed trapped here as the eye of the array. Hong Yu, wake up! Wake up! No matter how loudly everyone shouted or hit her, Hong Yu couldn't wake up from her sleep. At this moment, Alandate's shield-raising time came to an abrupt end. Pain, pain, pain. Big brother is in so much pain. Good sister, big brother's in pain too. A few sorrowful cries could be heard. This was the reaction of the Night Witches who had lost the ability to raise their shields to block the attacks. The attacks of the Night Witches landed on the bodies of Wondrous Pen and the others. However, this wasn't enough to kill Magic Pen and the others for the time being. With the shield that they shared with the Sword Ladies, it wasn't a big problem for them to hold on for a few more minutes. The most important thing now was to wake up Hong Yu as the eye of the array. Otherwise, when everyone's shield broke, the team would be wiped out. However, how could they wake up the sleeping Hong Yu? Everyone was at a loss. How is it? Is Hong Yu awake? Gohan retreated as he stood and arrived beside Hong Yu. At the same time, the other sword ladies also drew the battlefield to their swordsman's side. No, Magic Pen's tone was a bit dejected. Hong Yu must have been hit by the Western Temple's dark magic. If there's a purifying sword lady here, she should be able to cleanse the dark magic from Hong Yu's body. Damn it, isn't this the Martyr's Palace's territory? Why is there a Western Temple's magic array here? Yuan Ko, dark magic. Have a Martyr's Palace and the Western Temple formed an alliance? Yu Sikong complained in confusion. That's not strange. All the Yuan Kos in the world are together. All of them deserve to die. Gahan bit his lips. The memories of his parents' tragic deaths came flooding back, evoking deep hatred in Gahan. However, Ardwolf's sacrifice to help humans and Liu Ban's elders' words suddenly appeared in Gohan's mind. Of course, there are also some Yuan Kos who don't deserve to die. Gohan added, Commander, among your ancient swords or treasured swords, are there any sword maidens that can purify negative effects? Magic Pen, who was well aware of everyone else's background, naturally knew that no one else had a sword lady with a cleansing skill. They could only hope that the military governor had one. Cleansing skill. Gohan recalled the frigid sword from the Wudong sect dungeon. She was one of those sword ladies with a cleansing skill. Unfortunately, That was another matter for another dungeon. No matter how he thought about it, there was no way that a cute guy like Ching Pin could have a cleansing skill. I don't. Halfway through his sentence, Gohan suddenly remembered that he didn't have a sword lady with a cleansing skill, but he had an inherent barrier with a cleansing ability. Chapter 150. Do you still remember the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool that Gohan obtained in the King of Yu-Go Jian instance dungeon? Inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool effect. After use, a small independent barrier space will be formed with the user as the center. The barrier will not disappear until the user dies. Within this barrier, due to the influence of the sword cleansing pool, all negative attribute skills will not affect or harm the sword lady. The attack of the Confucian sword lady and the martial sword lady will be increased by 30%, stacking with all other non-barrier buffs. That's right, this was the item. From the item's effect, it could be seen that the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool, could purify negative attributes and skills. As long as this barrier was opened, it might be able to wash away the dark magic on Hong Yu. However, this inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool, had a very bad limitation. Every time it was used, it would lower Gohan's sword element limit by 10 points. Yes, it was lowering the sword element limit, not the sword element value. Moreover, if it was Gohan's first time using it, it would directly lower his sword element limit by 100 points. This was equivalent to reducing Gohan's current sword element value of 2,500 quarks to 2,400 quarks. The price was still very high. However, things had already come to this, and Gohan had no reason to be stingy with his sword element limit and give up on using this item that could turn the situation around. Gohan was not a hesitant person. Moreover, time did not allow him to hesitate. Gohan immediately took out the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool scroll from his dimensional pocket and injected his sword element. In an instant, the scroll emitted a bright light, illuminating the faces of the surrounding people. The Night Witch, who was besieging Gohan, let out a scream the moment she was illuminated by the light of the inherent barrier. She immediately ran away, immediately distancing herself from Gohan. What is this? It can actually emit light. Steel Centipede was shocked. Wasn't the Night Vortex supposed to absorb all light? What was up with that thing in the military governor's hand? That's the scroll of the inherent barrier. Wondrous Pen was knowledgeable and immediately recognized it. I didn't expect the Night Vortex to be unable to absorb the light of the inherent barrier. Inherent barrier? It's something that the sect leader of Yaowang treats as a treasure. Steel Centipede scratched his head. Military governor, you're just a newbie. How could you have such a precious thing? This is the inherent barrier sword cleansing pool. I hope it can purify the dark magic in Hong Yu's body. Gohan ignored Steel Centipede's question and calmly explained the name and origin of the sword cleansing pool. At the same time, the light of the innate barrier scroll grew brighter and brighter, to the point where it could light up the entire dark room. The Night Witches who had been attacking Cheng Ying and the other sword ladies in an imposing manner all retreated in the face of such light, hiding in the darkest part of the room where the light couldn't reach. This thing is so powerful. Hey, smelly military governor, why didn't you take this out earlier? Then we wouldn't have been beaten so badly by the Night Witch. Steel Centipede said with dissatisfaction. He was unhappy that Gohan had such a good thing, but why didn't he take it out earlier? His Errand 8 had lost 30% of its energy when he raised his shield. Steel Centipede, shut up. No one knows that the light of the innate barrier can't be devoured by the Dark Night Vortex. Gohan ignored Steel Centipede, but Magic Pen scolded Steel Centipede harshly. At this time, the light of the inherent barrier sword cleansing pool bloomed to its brightest moment. With a whoosh, the light of the innate barrier swept across the entire room like a shockwave. The originally dark space instantly became bright, and the entire room was completely lit up as if it was daytime. With Gohan as the center, a pool of flowing water appeared in the air. There were no walls to block it, and the pool of flowing water floated in the air like jelly. However, if you touched it with your hands, you would find that the pool of flowing water was actually flowing. Siyu, quick, throw Hong Yu into this pool of flowing water and see if you can dispel Hong Yu's magic. Magic Pen immediately asked Siyu to pick up Hong Yu and hold her in her hands. She came to the bottom of the pool of flowing water, slowly lifted Hong Yu up, and sent her into it. I can only last for 60 seconds, Gohan said with a frown. The activation of the innate barrier required an upper limit of sword essence, and the maintenance of the innate barrier required a continuous supply of sword essence. Gohan estimated that he would lose about 36 points of sword essence per second, and his innate barrier could only last for less than 60 seconds. He had to let Hong Yu purify the dark magic on her body before the innate barrier disappeared. Let's leave it to fate. This kind of thing is not something we can control. Yu spread out her hands. Indeed, everyone had done what they could. Whether Hong Yu could purify the dark magic in 60 seconds was her own business, and no one else could interfere. I'm going to observe the situation in this room and see where the night witches are hiding. Gohan left behind these words and left the group. He silently wandered towards the fixed enchantment and observed the situation. This was his first time using the innate barrier, and there were only 60 seconds left. There were many details that he had to understand. For example, the size of the innate barrier's range, its effects, and so on. It was said that the range of the innate barrier was not fixed, but determined by the ability of the holder and the strength of the mind. According to the information, Ming Yuan Jindi's innate barrier, Phoenix Palace, could replace a space the size of 2 Japanese mulberry continents. Of course, Gohan was not as powerful as Ming Yuan Jindi. After his sword purification pool was opened, it was only about 1 square kilometer in size and could barely contain more than half of the room within his innate barrier. The activation of the innate barrier required an upper limit of sword essence, and the maintenance of the innate barrier required a continuous supply of sword essence. Gohan estimated that he would lose about 36 points of sword essence every second. His innate barrier could only last for less than 60 seconds, and he had to do it before the innate barrier disappeared. The innate barrier also had a boundary. Generally speaking, only by killing the holder of the innate barrier could one break the boundary and escape from this world. But if your strength was strong enough and you had enough time, you could break a hole by repeatedly attacking a node on the boundary of the boundary. That way, you could break free from the boundary controlled by the enemy. Because the innate barrier and the holder's mind were one, Gohan could clearly feel the boundary of the innate barrier, as well as a group of fellows who were launching a desperate attack on the boundary. These fellows were none other than the night witches who had escaped. Under the cover of the light, the night witches, who could transform at will in the darkness, had lost their greatest support. They could only maintain their original forms. One had to admit that the night witches in their original forms were quite beautiful. They were originally young girls, but after the transformation, their skin grew pieces of pitch-black scales. However, these scales did not cover the girl's entire body. On the contrary, they only grew on a few of the girl's private parts. It was as if they were mosaics covering those parts like a set of sexy scale armor. As for the rest of their bodies, large patches of tanned and sexy skin were exposed, tempting any man who saw them to the point of wanting to have a go at them. It was said that in the real world, the night witches used their sexy bodies to lure men into a dark space, and then killed them as sacrifices to the goddess of the night, Nyx. However, at this time, their sexy bodies could no longer be sexy. The originally smooth skin began to rot, ooze, and fall off in large patches. It was as disgusting as a rotting corpse. It shouldn't be like this. Even if the night witches were exposed to sunlight, they would at most lose most of their strength. It's impossible for their skin to rot. Seeing this, Gohan, who was familiar with the night witch's information, was a little surprised. Could it be because of the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool? The essence of the sword cleansing pool is not limited to that pool of water, but the entire space can harm negative creatures? Gohan felt that he understood the sword cleansing pool a little better. He looked at the time again. and it had already been more than 20 seconds. In another 30 seconds, the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool, would disappear, and these miserable and painful night witches would become vicious killers again. He couldn't let them live. The night witches who were exposed to sunlight had combat power similar to mortals, not to mention being exposed to the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool, that had a purifying effect. Although these night witches resisted with all their might, how could they resist Guhan's fierce attacks? In less than 20 seconds, these arrogant night witches were all pierced through the heart by Guhan and absorbed by the dimensional vortex. Before the inherent barrier, sword cleansing pool disappeared, Hong Yu, who had been in a deep sleep, woke up and returned to normal. However, Guhan felt that after Hong Yu woke up, there was a slight change in the way she looked at him. He didn't know if this change was good or bad. But no matter what, this difficult stage was over, and the door to the altar was found. Guhan and the others would soon be able to see the legendary King Arthur, Artoria Pandoragon. Chapter 151. After taking out the key that had dropped from the night witch's body, Guhan and the others opened the door to the room. It was another dark and narrow passageway, but the end of the passageway wasn't far. They could see a clear light from there. After walking for less than a minute, they left the passageway and entered another room. This room was smaller than the night witch's room. Apart from the passageway that Guhan had taken, there were 3 other passageway entrances that led to this room. System prompt, Quest 5, Underground Labyrinth completed. Your team has arrived at the Dimensional Altar. Quest progress, 40%. Main quest updated. System prompt, Quest 6, Save King Arthur. King Arthur Artoria Pendragon has been bound by magic. Please break the magic binding and save the controlled King Arthur. This was the room where King Arthur was being held. Guhan could see a young girl in a snow-white wedding gown in the center of the room. She was bound to a high platform. This young girl had long blonde hair and a single strand of hair on her head. She was wearing a snow-white wedding dress and a pair of translucent white stockings. She was supposed to be a beautiful bride, but her hands were tied by a scarlet rope of light, and her feet were fixed in a position far away from her hands. Because her feet were too far away from her bound hands, her body was twisted into a graceful V shape. Her beautiful, smooth, and perky buttocks were sent in front of Guhan as if she was welcoming a guest. The young girl's snow-white buttocks, coupled with the pure white stockings, made Guhan, who had always been a man of few desires, suddenly feel a surge of heat, a heat that made him want to have this woman. Bah! Guhan bit his tongue to save himself from the inexplicable delusion. Steel's centipede, who had entered the altar after Guhan, excitedly ran to the exit of another passageway. Captain, we should have come from this passageway last time, right? This exit was the tunnel that they often used in previous dungeons. They entered the basement from the northeast entrance and exited after completing the quest. In other words, Wondrous Brush and the others had entered the altar through that passageway. This was the first time they had entered through this passageway. Forget it. This wasn't something worth paying attention to. What was truly worth paying attention to was the girl who was tied up in the middle of the platform. Everyone should be able to tell that she was one of the 10 kings of the Martyr's Palace that Guhan and the others needed to rescue. King Arthur Artoria Pendragon. Newbies who entered the dungeon for the first time might rush up to the high platform in an attempt to save Artoria. Magic Brush and the others had done this the first time, but the chaotic dimensional turbulence around the altar had shattered their shields. If they hadn't retreated in time, someone would have died on the platform. Grab your sword, ladies, and get ready to break the formation. Wondrous Brush gave the order. It was very difficult to pass this stage. Just getting close to King Arthur Artoria on the altar was a huge problem. The invisible, chaotic, dimensional turbulence floating around her would tear everything that came into contact with it into pieces. Getting close to Artoria was only the first step. The more difficult part was still to come. Once they got close to Artoria, a new and powerful enemy would appear. They wanted to defeat this new enemy. This enemy was very powerful. To deal with such an opponent, the team needed to cooperate flawlessly. Wondrous Brush wasn't sure. As a newbie, Gahan might be strong enough, but it would be a huge problem if everyone cooperated well. This stage had stuck Wondrous Brush and the others for 7 to 8 days. Later, Wondrous Brush found some magic masters in the real world and found a way to break the dimensional turbulence by studying the screenshots of the vein patterns on the altar. Military Governor, stand here and don't move. Hong Yu, take over the position of Guardian and listen to my commands. Wondrous Brush's method of breaking the formation required the 5 of them to act strictly according to his instructions without any mistakes. Originally, Hong Yu wasn't among the 5 of them. The other 5 were very familiar with this method and didn't need Hong Yu to join them. However, Guardian Planet had already left. Wondrous Brush was naturally worried about the newbie Gahan, so he could only let Hong Yu take over the position of Guardian Planet. After all, Hong Yu had seen the 5 of them break the formation so many times. See you, old rules. You enter the altar first. Take 3 steps forward and destroy the rune in front of you. UCU strictly followed Wondrous Brush's instructions and stepped onto the high platform from the designated place. Then, she took 3 steps forward and destroyed the rune under her feet with the double sword duck. This rune was the rune that caused the dimensional turbulence in a certain space on the altar. As long as this rune was destroyed, that space would return to peace. And this space was the space that you Sikong was about to step onto next. Sikong, the altar in front of you is already calmed down. Get on the altar, take 4 steps forward and destroy the rune. Steel Centipede, it's your turn. Take 5 steps forward and destroy the rune. The Yu siblings, Steel Centipede, Hong Yu, Wondrous Brush, and the others went up the altar one after another. They took turns. Each person took a few steps in a certain direction and destroyed the rune under their feet, clearing the dimensional turbulence in the path of another person. Then, the next person would repeat the steps of the previous person until all the runes were destroyed. Then, the space of the altar would completely return to normal. This was a very precise and meticulous process that didn't tolerate a single mistake. Once someone took an extra step into the range of the dimensional turbulence or destroyed the wrong rune, they would be destroyed. Originally, after more than 100 times of practice and more than 10 actual battles, the team formed by Wondrous Pen, Guardian Planet, and the others could complete this step perfectly. However, with the addition of Hong Yu, this perfectly became a tiny difference. It wasn't that Hong Yu wasn't capable enough. It was her first time participating in this competition, and she was already considered an amazing genius to be able to make such a small mistake. Unfortunately, it was her first time after all. If she hadn't practiced it before, she would have missed by just a little bit. That little bit would have been enough to kill everyone on the stage. When it was Hong Yu's turn to destroy the rune for the 5th time, Wondrous Brush, who had a premonition that there would be trouble, kept a close eye on Hong Yu's movements and warned her if he found anything wrong. However, Wondrous Brush's eyesight wasn't as good as he thought. When Hong Yu destroyed the complicated rune, she accidentally destroyed a small symbol of another rune next to it. Almost instantly, a powerful dimensional turbulence swept across the altar. This was the result of the altar's anti-destruction mechanism being triggered. The rune on the altar had already sensed that someone was destroying it. It immediately activated all the remaining runes and set off a violent dimensional turbulence. Retreat. Immediately, the altar. Wondrous Brush's expression changed, and he immediately ordered his teammates to retreat from the altar. However, it was too late. The speed of the dimensional turbulence was much faster than the speed of retreat. The first to be hit was Steel Centipede. The destructive dimensional turbulence was the first to hit him. Shield. Steel Centipede placed a Londate in front of him and used a Londate's advanced skill, Shield Raise. This was a defensive skill that could reduce a large amount of damage. As long as the Sword Lady was in the form of a sword, any sword wielder would be able to use the Sword Lady's skill. In other words, anyone could be a sword master. The only difference was whether you had the exquisite swordsmanship of the Sword Lady. In other words, it could be said that it surpassed the Sword Lady's swordsmanship, just like Gahan. It had to be said that Arondate's defense was one of the best among the famed sword-grade sword maidens. Iron Centipede had relied on his shield and Arondate's sword Tao characteristics to persevere in the dimensional turbulence, even though his personal shield had less than 4% energy left. After Steel Centipede, the siblings Yu Sikong and Yu Siyu faced the dimensional turbulence. Fortunately, in the process of moving and destroying the runes, the Yu siblings were very lucky to be very close. If either of the Yu siblings faced the dimensional turbulence alone, only death would await them. However, it was a different story when the siblings were together. Dual Sword Mandarin Duck. Dual Sword Mandarin Duck. Fusion. This was a unique ability of dual swords. It could fuse the personal shields of both sides together, allowing the two sword wielders to share a double shield. At the same time, their attack and defense would increase by 50%. This was the reason why the Yu siblings were able to rank second on the list of famous swords, virtual list. After their fusion, their attack and personal shields had reached an abnormal level. Even when facing some spiritual sword ladies, they were not inferior. Coupled with their invincible ultimate move, they were an existence that struck fear into the hearts of famous sword rank powerhouses. With the help of the fusion shield, the Yu siblings also resisted the dimensional turbulence. What was left was Magic Pen and Hong Yu. These two did not have methods to strengthen their defense like Steel Centipede and the Yu siblings. In the face of the dimensional turbulence, they could only wait for death. Chapter 152. I'm going to die. This was Wondrous Pen's thought as he faced the dimensional turbulence. Although his shadow-bearing sword was a Confucian treasured sword, it was a rare sword maiden with a murderous nature. The strength of the close-fitting shield was even weaker than that of a famed sword maiden, and it did not have any defensive skills. Wondrous Pen was truly unable to withstand the dimensional turbulence's area of effect attack. Hong Yu, hide behind me. With me helping you reduce the intensity of the dimensional turbulence, you should be able to survive. At the critical moment, Wondrous Pen displayed his gentlemanly charm and gave Hong Yu the chance to escape. You want to die? It's not that easy. At some point, Gohan had suddenly blocked in front of Wondrous Pen. At the critical moment of life and death, the tip of the Yu King's sword propped up an umbrella of sword chi and collided with the chaotic dimensional turbulence. This person's sword chi can actually block the dimensional turbulence. Wondrous Pen was truly shocked. Sword chi could not contend with the dimensional turbulence. This was common knowledge to every sword wielder. However, Gohan's sword chi was actually able to withstand the dimensional turbulence head-on. This meant that the density and purity of his sword chi had far exceeded most sword wielders. Perhaps only an immortal sword maiden or a top-notch sword master like the Mystic Spirit Sword could achieve this. This was the power of Gohan's 9 swords of mysterious heaven. As long as there was enough sword essence, Gohan could rely on an immortal sword maiden to fight it out with an immortal sword maiden. The dimensional turbulence could not be sustained for a long time. Furthermore, once it erupted, the dimensional turbulence bound to the dimensional altar would completely disappear. When the turbulence gradually subsided, the runes on the altar would also lose their effects. Everyone did not need to break the runes anymore. They just needed to go to King Arthur Artoria's side to save her. However, the others did not move. Instead, they gradually gathered together. Listen to my command. Everyone, immediately release your immortal sword maidens and prepare for battle. Wondrous Pen paused for a moment. This will be a tough battle. He said this to Gohan. After removing the threat of the spatial turbulence, the team had to face the meteor-grade Yuan Co boss, Grand Magus Merlin, who was guarding King Arthur Artoria. Because of King Arthur's confession after defecting to the humans had a relatively complete understanding of a certain period of England's history. They also had a very comprehensive understanding of the great mage Merlin. According to King Arthur Artoria herself, Merlin was her mentor and best friend. After King Arthur pulled out the sword in the stone, he became King Arthur's advisor and assisted her in defeating the 10 kings and unifying England. After King Arthur's death, Merlin chose to continue serving King Arthur's successor. In fact, He had served 3 generations of kings of England. Later on, Merlin offended the demonic dragon, which Vivian, and was imprisoned in the air cage. King Arthur did not know the rest of the story. Legend had it that Merlin was the child of the King of Nightmares and a mortal woman. He was born with powerful magic and was proficient in transfiguration and dream invasion. The knowledge in his head was richer than 10 libraries. He was one of the 4 most powerful mages in the Western world. For some unknown reason, Merlin, who was supposed to be King Arthur's companion, had become the final boss guarding King Arthur Artoria. In the previous battle, Clever Pen and the others had used up almost all their strength to defeat Merlin, but that was all they could do. After Merlin was injured, he turned into smoke and disappeared without a trace. However, after Merlin disappeared, he left behind a scroll. Using this scroll, they could remove the magic chains that bound King Arthur. Thinking back to those battles, Magic Pen and the others still felt that it was very tragic. Not only did their famed swords-level sword maidens' durability fall below 5%, even the ancient sword maidens and treasure sword-level sword maidens were forced to come out of fight. In the end, they had to rely on Hong Yu's ultimate skill to barely injure Merlin. Steel Centipede. Your Erendate is responsible for blocking Merlin's attacks. Remember, you have to find the right time to cast Arondate's basic skill to interrupt Merlin's spells. Rain, Sikong, your dual sword to the main damage output. Fight Merlin head-on. When Merlin plans to cast an 8th level spell or above, you must take away his magic staff so that he can't attack. If he uses a forbidden spell, immediately enter the fusion state and break his shield before he casts the spell. Hong Yu, your Hong Yu will follow the old rules and secretly look for Merlin's fatal weakness. You must injure Merlin severely, or else we won't be a match for him. Military Governor, you'll take over the responsibility of guarding the planet. You'll be responsible for restraining Merlin's flanks and protecting Hong Yu while dealing damage to Merlin. Magic Pen quickly arranged all kinds of orders. He was indeed a very skilled veteran, but he seemed to have forgotten one thing. Boss, I might not be able to handle Merlin. Steel Centipede raised his hand with a bitter expression. The spatial turbulence just now left Erendate with only 4% of his shield's energy. If he wants to restore it to its full value, he'll need at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Magic Pen's forehead began to moisten. And at most a minute, Merlin would respawn. 20 minutes later, even the daylilies would be cold. Captain, us siblings have also used our fusion. If we won't use it again, we'll have to wait for about 10 minutes. The Yu siblings inform Magic Pen of another grievous news. Merlin was a great wizard who could use forbidden spells. Once Merlin used his forbidden spells, it would be a destructive force. Apart from Erendatet, who was at his peak condition, no one else would be able to survive. Naturally, forbidden spells needed a long channeling time. During this time, they just had to attack Merlin and interrupt his casting. But Merlin wasn't a fool. Before casting the forbidden spell, he would first use the 8th level Water Glory to create a water-type shield to protect himself. Shui Mu Tianhua's defense was very strong. In the previous battle, only when everyone attacked the same point and the Yu siblings entered their fusion state would they be able to break Shui Mu Tianhua's defense and interrupt Merlin's forbidden spell. This was also the reason why Steel Centipede had suggested that the Yu siblings use their fusion ability to clear the battlefield during the battle with the Night Witch. However, Magic Pen had refused because this skill needed to be used on Merlin. In short, Arondate's defense and the Yu siblings' fusion ability were the most important to defeating Merlin. Without these 2 points, it was impossible to defeat Merlin. But now, Steel Centipede's shield had been destroyed, and the Yu siblings' fusion needed time to cool down. These 2 most important combat powers had lost their abilities. Retreat. Retreat. Magic Pen gritted his teeth and made this decision. While Merlin hadn't respawned yet, everyone immediately left the dungeon and gave up on this mission. Without the combat power of Steel Centipede and the Yu siblings, fighting Merlin rashly was 100% suicide. Magic Pen's decision was very decisive and correct, but it was still a bit late. Guest from afar. Since you've come here, why leave? A leisurely voice said faintly. Immediately, a pale-faced but extraordinarily handsome man with red lips and white teeth appeared. Wearing a pointy wizard hat and a black wizard robe, the wizard slowly walked in front of Gahan and the others. I'm Merlin. Thank you for your hard work. Great Wizard Yuan Ko Merlin, who is comparable to an advanced spirit sword level, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Something's wrong. This was everyone's first thought, including Gahan. In the previous records of Wondrous Pen and the others, Merlin had always appeared directly beside King Arthur and attacked the invaders without any delay. There was no such opening nonsense, and he had even taken the initiative to walk in front of Wondrous Pen and the others. More importantly, Merlin previously had the image of an old man with a white beard hanging down to his chest and a face full of wrinkles. Now, he had turned into a handsome young man. Prepare for battle. Military governor, and I will hold Merlin back. Everyone else, evacuate the dungeon. Seeing Merlin's appearance, Magic Pen's face turned cold. He planned to let himself and the military governor, who were the strongest among the six, delay Merlin and create an opportunity for the others to escape through the dungeon. No hurry, no hurry. If you want to escape, you can do so at any time. I won't stop you. Merlin laughed heartily. Of course, it's best if you can take Artoria with you. Then I'll be very grateful. You want us to take Artoria away? Magic Pen's eyes narrowed. You won't stop us? Why should I stop you? Merlin smiled, even more happily. You juniors might not know this, but when Artoria and I were still alive in the modern world, we were best friends, master and disciple. Without me, Artoria would not have the glory of unifying England. Why would I want to harm Artoria? It doesn't make sense. But the previous few times, this Merlin wasn't like this. The one who stopped us and wanted to kill us was also you. Magic Pen thought silently. There must be a conspiracy, but what is it? We obviously don't have the power to resist him. He doesn't need to deceive us. Hong Yu, go and save King Arthur Artoria. We'll take her away. Magic Pen said to Hong Yu. Yes. Hong Yu originally wanted to say that she did not have a scroll to remove the magic chains. So how could she save King Arthur? However, seeing Magic Pen's calm face, she knew that Magic Pen must have his own arrangements. Wait, bring this along. Otherwise, you won't be able to save Artoria. Merlin smiled, and a scroll flew into Hong Yu's hand. You Orientals have a saying, send the Buddha to the West, right? Chapter 153. You let them go just like that? Didn't you say that you wouldn't let any humans go? After Gahan and the others left the altar, a wooden tortoise slowly crawled out of the tunnel and said to Merlin, who was standing on the altar, I've changed my mind. Humans who can walk out of your place should be stronger than other humans. Merlin said in detail. His originally smooth and delicate skin began to slowly age, and finally he became the old man with white hair that Magic Pen had seen a few times before. What are you planning? Merlin, could it be that filth hasn't completely controlled you? The wooden tortoise asked curiously. Of course filth has controlled me long ago. Old thing Lubon, I don't have a strong backer like you. Filth has long penetrated into my bones. I'm already filthy beyond cure. I'm completely a filthy person. Merlin laughed. He laughed very happily. We really came out just like that. Steel's centipede, who had just come out of the basement, still had a dumbfounded look on his face. Wasn't this plot a bit too inexplicable? Great Wizard Merlin, who had originally planned to fight with all his might, had actually let him go just like that. Be careful. Don't drop King Arthur. Hong Yu, who was at the side, curled her lips. Steel's centipede and Guhan were carrying the stretcher together. On the stretcher was the unconscious King Arthur. At this time, King Arthur Artoria was like a clear spring, sleeping on the stretcher. His delicate nose moved up and down as he breathed, making Guhan want to take a bite. Wait, Guhan's mind seemed to have lost control again. Maybe it's because we took the middle road. Magic Pen glanced at Gahan. Thanks to Brother Military Governor, we took the middle road today, so Merlin didn't attack us. Other than that, I can't think of any other explanation to explain this. Steel Centipede pursed his lips and wanted to refute, but after thinking about it, he really couldn't find a reason to refute. Although Steel Centipede was a bit narrow-minded, he wasn't an unreasonable person. Since he couldn't find a reason, he could only suppress his anger. System prompt. Mission 6. Save King Arthur has been completed. King Arthur Artoria Pendragon has broken free from the magic shackles and left Terminal T1. Mission progress, 50%. The main quest has been updated. System notice, Quest 7. Escape from pursuit. King Arthur has escaped, but the news will reach the ears of the 3 Universe Kings who were lured away by the Ardwolves. The first Universe King will hunt you down in an hour. Please escape to the first safe location and use the communication device there to contact Jing City to get more help. System prompt. Please take note. In the process of escaping, please ensure that King Arthur does not die and is not recaptured by the pursuers. If we can't reach the safe point within 3 hours, the first safe point will be destroyed. Let's go to Terminal 2. As soon as the mission notification sounded, Magic Pen immediately led his team straight to Terminal T2. If it weren't for the fact that Guhan and Steel Centipede were carrying the stretcher and deliberately slowed down, they would have run so fast that they would have flown. Terminal 2 wasn't far from Terminal T1. A normal person would be able to reach it in 10 minutes. With Guhan and the others running at full speed, they reached the entrance of Terminal 2 in less than a minute. There are many Yuan Ko in Terminal 2, but our goal isn't to kill them all. Our goal is the perfectly preserved Parema Marauder in Terminal 2's cargo warehouse. We have to reach the warehouse as soon as possible, seize the Parema Marauder, and leave the ruins of Xianyang Airport. Xianyang was more than 900 kilometers away from Yanjing City. It was impossible for Gahan and the others to run there on foot, so they had to find a suitable means of transportation. In the real world, when a swordsman went on a raid, he would bring along a hover car distributed by the council. It came with a fully automatic driving system, allowing the swordsman to move quickly in any terrain. There was no need to look for a means of transportation. But obviously, there was no such treatment in the instance dungeon. Magic Pen and the others had to find a moving means of transportation. Fortunately, this was the ruins of the airport, so they didn't lack cars. According to later statistics, there were 5 large parking lots in the ruins of Xianyang Airport, with about 5,000 cars parked there. Unfortunately, after hundreds of years of exposure to the elements, 99% of these cars have become useless scraps of iron. Since 99% of them had become scraps of iron, it meant that 1% of the cars could still be used. The first time they came to this part of the instance dungeon, Magic Pen and the others wasted more than an hour before they found a normal car, an intact Parema Marauder. The Parema Marauder was equipped with a Suum SISB 4 diesel engine, 300 PS/1, 100 Nm. It was an invincible off-road vehicle with a weight of up to 15 tons. He possessed powerful bulletproof capabilities and was able to withstand damage from hand grenades, submachine guns, anti-tank mines, and 7,000 TNT equivalents. From a certain perspective, he was not much different from a tank. Yup, he could run faster than a tank. The Parema Marauder could reach a maximum speed of 120 kilometers per hour and could travel in all terrain. When faced with obstacles such as walls, trees, and boulders blocking the way, one could just ignore them and rush through them. If one didn't mind the repair fees, it could also run freely in the forest, provided that one had to avoid some very thick trees. In addition, it could maintain normal operation at temperatures below 55 degrees Celsius and above minus 35 degrees Celsius. It could also be freely driven in waist-deep rivers. It could even be driven on a minefield without having to worry about the tires. In short, this was an off-road vehicle that was very suitable for driving on the roads of the apocalypse. With it, one could overcome about 70% of difficult terrain and maintain a high speed of about 60 kilometers per hour. There was simply no other vehicle that was more suitable for Gahan's team at this time. Therefore, this Parema Marauder was something that Guhan and the others had to obtain. A Templar was lowering his head to take care of his armor. For a qualified Templar, Taking care of his armor until it was as shiny as new was a daily requirement. If one day the armor was stained with dust, it would be a huge stain in his life that could never be erased. Therefore, he had to carefully take care of his armor. Suddenly, a flash of light flashed in front of him. What is this? What a fast flash of light! Just as the Templar thought of this, he felt his head lighten and then fell down. His eyes just happened to be able to see his toes. This sword mistress is very strong. This was the first time Gahan saw the sword mistress, Cheng-Ying, in action. The last time he saw Cheng-Ying, it was in the dark vortex of the night. Gahan did not see anything, but this time Gahan saw it. Cheng-Ying's swordsmanship was very strong. Among all the sword mistresses that Gahan had seen, it was the most powerful one. Thanks to the fact that he and Steel Centipede were carrying the stretcher, Miyabi did not let him clean up the Yuan Ko in Terminal T2. Instead, the Yu siblings and Hong Yu did it. It was too easy and fast for Cheng-Ying to clean up these rubbish Jiao-class and Dragon-class Yuan Ko. It was always one slash, never procrastinating, and never wasting any time. The blade of the sword just cut down the fatal parts of the Yuan Ko, and then slid through the gaps of the muscles, cutting off all the vitality of the Yuan Ko. The number of Yuan Jun that Cheng-Ying had killed was more or less the same as the other three combined. From this, it could be seen how powerful Cheng-Ying was. And her master, Wondrous Brush, was worthy of being hailed as the strongest person in this team. Gohan asked himself that even if he used all his trump cards, he would not be a match for Cheng-Ying. Cheng-Ying was powerful, and his 9 swords of mysterious heaven could also suppress her. Not to mention the 9 heaven-defying moves of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. What made Gahan admit that he was inferior was the 300,000 swordsmanship points on Miyabi. Gahan only had a little more than 2,500 swordsmanship points. No matter how exquisite his moves were, after his sword energy was exhausted, he would be tortured by Cheng-Ying. With the full protection of the Cheng-Ying sword, it didn't take much time to cross Terminal T2 to reach the warehouse. The Yu siblings slashed open the rotten door of the warehouse, and a warehouse full of goods appeared in front of Gohan's eyes. Military Governor, Steel Centipede, put King Arthur down. Sikong and Siyu, stand guard at the door. You go guard the roof. Steel Centipede, cooperate with me. Peel off the skin of that Paramount Marauder and fix it. Military Governor, there's a barrel of diesel in the warehouse. Go find it and pour it into the fuel tank. Miyabi assigned the tasks one by one. Although this Paramount Marauder was in good condition, after hundreds of years, there was still some damage. The first time he used this car, the engine stalled halfway and he had to abandon the car and walk on foot. One of the 10 kings caught up with him, and he had to give up the task and leave the instance dungeon. After that, Miyabi spent a day learning a set of car maintenance and repair skills from 1,000 years ago on the internet. Sure enough, he found many problems with this seemingly new car. After repairing it, there were no more cases of it breaking down halfway. Gahan, who was assigned the task of finding diesel, quickly found a barrel of diesel in a corner of the warehouse. He weighed it and found that the originally full barrel of diesel was now less than half a barrel. It was likely due to volatilization. After hundreds of years, no matter how well it was sealed, a lot of diesel would have volatilized. The remaining diesel was not even enough to fill up half of the Marauder's fuel tank. The diesel that could have provided this 15-ton steel behemoth with a speed of 500 kilometers could only be used for around 100 kilometers. In other words, if Gahan and the others wanted to drive this car to a safe point, they would have to find a gas station that could refuel with diesel along the way. In an instance dungeon hundreds of years after the apocalypse, this was a very difficult thing to do. The diesel of the gas station would also volatilize. Chapter 154. Damn it, this thing is so fun to drive. Steel Centipede, who was sitting in the driver's seat, shouted excitedly. He kept turning the steering wheel, and his body was constantly bumped up and down as if he was sitting on a trampoline. Awesome. Damn it. Every time I come to this dungeon, I count on this car. It was obvious that Steel Centipede was very satisfied with the Paramount Marauder that he was driving. This king of a land gave Steel Centipede an unparalleled driving experience. Of course, the Yu siblings, who were bumping their heads on the roof of the car many times, might not think so. Although hundreds of years later, traces of the roads of the past could still be seen on the ground. The road conditions were no different from the surface of the moon. Every 5 steps, there would be a ditch, and every 10 steps, there would be a pit. Occasionally, there would be large pieces of soil blocking the road, or there would be collapsed concrete buildings. One could imagine how bad the road conditions were. Usually, when sword bearers went out, they would drive a hovercraft to deal with these bad road conditions. A hovercraft that hovered 10 meters above the ground could shield them from the bad road conditions by 90%. But driving an off-road vehicle was different. The thrill of the bumpy road was really enjoyable. Many sword bearers loved this thrill to death. They even custom-made super off-road vehicles that could be used for both wet and floating purposes. When there was no Yuan Shun to deal with, they would open the field mode and enjoy the highs of life as much as they wanted on the undulating ground. For example, Steel Centipede was such a person. However, Magic Pen, who was sitting beside Steel Centipede, had a tense expression on his face. He did not say anything, and no one could see his expression. However, from his right hand that was tightly grasping the armrest, Magic Pen's mood was a little subtle. The Yu siblings' behavior was the other extreme compared to Steel Centipede's. Yu Siyu was tightly hugging her brother's arms, trembling and shouting, "Brother, I'm scared." Although Yu Sikong was also very scared, he still hugged his sister tightly and put his face on his sister's neck. No, he was just comforting his sister. If Magic Pen was forced to be calm, then Hong Yu was really calm. Moreover, no matter how the car shook, Hong Yu's buttocks could be firmly fixed on the seat. She didn't even float, as if her buttocks were fixed on the seat by a nail. This was a very amazing thing. I believe that all readers have experienced the scene of their head bumping into the roof of the car. Who do you think can be like Hong Yu? No matter how bumpy the car is, she will not leave the seat. Like Hong Yu, there was another person who could maintain this magical state. Naturally, that person was Gahan, sitting in the last row. Gahan had another task, which was to take care of the unconscious Artoria. Gahan did not refuse this task. Gahan placed Artoria flat on the seat at the back, and then used the nylon rope he found in the car to tie Artoria's body tightly to the seat. This way, Artoria would not be hurt by the car's bumpy ride. Gahan even let Artoria's head rest on his lap to make her as comfortable as possible. This was the first time Gahan took care of someone to this extent, and it was a Yuan Ko, a virtual Yuan Ko that existed in the game. Gahan also did not understand why he was like this. This was not like him at all. What was more serious was that Gahan could feel the blood in his body flowing uncontrollably to his lower body. As long as Artoria was by Gahan's side, Gahan's imagination would run wild, and he would imagine many scenes that he had never thought of before. Even when Maiden bathed him, Gahan's heart did not waver. It was completely different from today, when he only took a look at Artoria's body, and he felt like he was going to explode. Is this my karmic fire? Gahan remembered a passage in the Green Lotus 3 Swords. The karmic fire blazes, and the heart springs boil. If the karmic fire is not extinguished, the sword technique will not succeed. I'm in big trouble. Gahan smiled bitterly, closed his eyes, and did not look at Artoria again. System notification. The first universe level, Yuan Ko, has received the news that King Arthur Artoria has been rescued. He is now rushing towards you. Please find a safe place as soon as possible to avoid the first universe level, Yuan Ko's pursuit. Gahan closed his eyes and rested for a while. Then, he suddenly received a notification from the system. These universe-level Yuan Ko seemed to have a way to track Artoria's position, and they could accurately locate Gahan and the others. Therefore, they had to find a safe place before Yuan Ko arrived. Everyone, start the countdown. The time is 1.5 hours. Magic Pen, whose face was pale, heard the system notification and ordered Gahan and the others. 1.5 hours was based on past experience. The first Yuan Ko needed to catch up to them. In fact, Magic Pen could increase the time a little, so the actual time needed to catch up was more than 1 hour and 40 minutes. Understood. Steel Puppet, how long can the current diesel last? Magic Pen asked Steel Puppet. We can still run for about 10 kilometers. Steel Puppet glanced at the fuel gauge. We are about 8 kilometers away from the first diesel supply point. We can catch up. Only 2 kilometers of fuel left. Wondrous Pen was a little puzzled. He clearly remembered that the last time he arrived at the first diesel supply point, there should still be 5 kilometers of fuel left. No wonder it felt more bumpy just now than the previous few times. This steel centipede must have chosen a difficult path in pursuit of excitement. Wondrous Pen guessed, but he didn't blame the steel centipede. After the bumpy journey, the raiders arrived at the first fuel supply point. It was a gas station that had been abandoned for God knows how long. The concrete structure was still intact, but the roof of the gas station, which was supported by steel bars, had completely collapsed. Everything, including the refueling equipment, was buried by the roof. However, a tall and cowardly sign was still standing in the same place. The dim China Petrochemical Company told everyone who the original owner of this gas station was. Even if it was not buried, it would still be the same. After hundreds of years, even if the equipment was maintained with oiled paper in Germany, it would definitely be useless. Even if the refueling equipment could still be used, the diesel in the underground storage would have long evaporated. Even if it had not evaporated completely, after hundreds of years, who knew how many impurities had been mixed into it? It would be strange if it could still be used. Steel Puppet, drive the car to the oil truck. Remember to find an oil drum and bring the rest of the diesel. Fortunately, there was still half a can of diesel stored in the tightly sealed oil truck. It was enough to fill the raiders' fuel tank. It could even be said that they were a little rich. While Steel Puppet was refueling, Gohan also very considerately carried Artoria from the back seat, so that she could also recover under his gaze. As soon as she was exposed to the sun, he found that Artoria's nose began to turn red, sweat began to appear on her forehead, and the skin of her mouth became very dry. She began to unconsciously moan and shout, "Water, water, water, Hong Yu. Did any of you bring water? Artoria is thirsty." Gohan wanted to ask for some water from Hong Yu and the others. Water? There's no water. Hong Yu looked at the sweating Artoria with a strange expression. Magic Pen specifically told us not to bring water. Hearing Hong Yu's words, Gohan was silent. He had read the complete dungeon information and naturally knew why Magic Pen specifically told them not to bring any water. It's good for us if she doesn't drink water. Hong Yu paused. After all, she's just an NPC. You don't have to be so concerned about her. Yeah, she's just an NPC. Gohan laughed self-deprecatingly. What was wrong with him today? Why was he acting like this in front of an NPC? Wasn't he the one who would laugh to death at any NPC as long as they were of help to him in completing the quest? Why was he concerned about an NPC's thirst? Moreover, she was thirsty and would be of help to the quest. Let's go get in the car. On the other side, Steel Boy had already filled the Marauders with diesel and put 2 bottles of spare diesel in the trunk. Just as Magic Pen was about to call Gohan and the others to get in the car and leave, the ground suddenly began to shake. Hong Yu, what happened? Magic Pen asked Hong Yu, who was in charge of investigating. Let me see. Hong Yu jumped onto the roof of the gas station and looked into the distance. Her expression changed, reporting, "There's a Godzilla approaching us." Godzilla? Why is he here? Wondrous Pen suspected that his ears were playing tricks on him. In the past dozen or so instance dungeons, he had never encountered Godzilla. How could he appear this time when he was refueling his car? Captain, don't think about it. It must be because we didn't defeat Merlin, so Bat changed our opponent. Damn, Steel Boy would rather fight with that old guy Merlin. Steel Boy was on the verge of tears as he said this, because Godzilla was a more troublesome Yuan Ko than Merlin. Yuan Ko name. Godzilla, first generation. Level. Meteor World of Origin. Easter Magic Beasts Instance Dungeon Appearance. Rare Instance Dungeon Health. 5 stars Attack. 4 stars Agility. 2 stars Monster Power. 5 stars Abilities. Godzilla's entire body is a weapon. The most powerful are his claws and the heat ray he shoots from his mouth. Ultimate move. Stomp, collapse of heaven and earth, heat ray. Description. Although he belongs to the Eastern magic beasts, his fighting style and appearance are more similar to the Western magic beasts. Godzilla has appeared many times in history, and each time he was killed, but each time he resurrected. Thus, some people say that Godzilla is actually a race, but no one knows the truth. Godzilla has the health of a meteor Yuan Ko, the attack of a meteor Yuan Ko, and the monster power of a meteor Yuan Ko, but his agility is terrible. He doesn't seem to be good at dealing with agile opponents, so try to eliminate him like ants biting an elephant to death. Chapter 155. Everyone, get in the car and leave this place immediately. Quick! At Magic Pen's command, everyone entered the car in a single file. Although Gahan was carrying Artoria, he was the first to enter the car. Let's go. I hope this Godzilla isn't coming for us. Unfortunately, Magic Pen's hope was soon dashed. After Steel Centipede drove the Marauder at full speed for a while, Magic Pen sadly discovered that Godzilla was right behind them. Moreover, the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Obviously, Godzilla had no intention of separating from Gahan and the others. Steel Centipede, speed up. Steel Centipede had been waiting for these words for a long time. At Magic Pen's command, Steel Centipede immediately stepped on the accelerator. The car's speed from 60 kilometers per hour to 100 kilometers per hour. This was a severe test for both the Marauder and the passengers in the car. This was especially true for the unconscious Artoria. In his haste to carry her into the car, Gahan did not secure her with a nylon rope again. He could only hold her in his arms and let the rich fragrance of her body enter his nose and ears. His lower body was getting more and more uncontrollable. Damn it, now is not the time to think about these things. Gahan turned his head and looked at Godzilla, who was chasing after the car. He immediately said, "Stop the car. We can't run anymore. Godzilla is still getting closer. Even if it can't catch up with us, the car will be finished before us at this rate." Gahan was right. When they had passed through a lot of very rough roads, the car's chassis and the front of the car had probably suffered a lot of damage. It might not be serious for a while, but after a long time, the Marauder would definitely break down. At that time, they would even lose their only means of transportation. "Stop the car. Let us down." Magic Pen was, after all, the brain of Yao Guang's sword faction. At this critical moment, he was clear about the situation and knew that they could not run anymore. Yes, Steel Centipede came to an abrupt stop, and Gahan and the others jumped out of the window. Steel Centipede also wanted to get out and fight, but he was stopped by Magic Pen. "You go first, park this car in a safe place, and then come back to meet us." In the eyes of Magic Pen, there was no doubt about the weight of this Marauder. He would rather temporarily lose a powerful combat force like Steel Centipede than let this Marauder be damaged. Understood. Steel Centipede drove the Raider and sped away with Artoria, leaving Gohan and the other four to face the 80-meter-tall, 20,000-ton monster. "Captain, how should we deal with him?" Yusitsung's face scrunched up. This gigantic Godzilla was too tricky to deal with. He was so tricky that he had no experience in dealing with him. He could only look at Magic Brush with a hopeful gaze, hoping that he could give one or two wise opinions. "I don't know either." Magic Brush's words instantly made Yusitsung despair. "But Mr. Military Governor might know." Magic Brush looked at Gahan indifferently. "Mr. Military Governor, I will now hand over the command to you. It's time for you to show us your commanding ability." "Okay." Gohan looked at Magic Brush deeply and calmly accepted the command. Above the ruins, two streams of light suddenly flashed. If one used a high-speed camera to track them, they would find that they were a pair of cute girls who looked like a dragon and a phoenix. They rushed towards a gigantic Godzilla without hesitation. Compared to the size of Godzilla, the two girls looked like two toy soldiers. Hiss! Godzilla let out a deafening hiss. It had discovered the two girls who were overestimating themselves. It lifted one of its feet and tried to stomp the two girls to death as if they were cockroaches. Anyone who had stepped on cockroaches before knew that it wasn't easy to stomp a cockroach to death, especially a pair of intelligent and fast cockroaches. The two girls dodged Godzilla's foot and took advantage of the momentum to step on Godzilla's rough skin, which was like a staircase, and quickly walked up. Godzilla has a weakness, and because of his size, his weakness is infinitely magnified. In fact, Godzilla is the same as humans. He's most afraid of moves like the kick to the groin. You can see his private parts if you keep moving up his legs. Attack those two big pockets. Godzilla can't bear this kind of pain. This was what Guhan had said to the Yu siblings before the operation. And the Yu sibling Sword Maiden's twin Sword Mandarin Duck also acted strictly according to these words. As for what those two big pockets are, I think the author doesn't need to explain. If you don't know, you can go to the bathroom and see for yourself. The twin sword sisters kept moving up Godzilla's legs. Godzilla seemed to have realized that their destination wasn't friendly. He squatted down and began to slap his legs with both hands, trying to kill the two flies. Godzilla will definitely try to slap you off. Don't panic. At this time, you don't need to move up anymore. You just need to transform into your sword form and stick to Godzilla's skin. The double Sword Mandarin Duck looked at each other. Everything was just as the military governor had said. Godzilla began to try to slap himself off with his hands. Thus, the double Sword Mandarin Duck suddenly transformed back into its sword form and stuck to Godzilla's skin. As mentioned before, Godzilla's skin was like a staircase. It wasn't difficult to stick to it. Godzilla's wide palms couldn't do anything to the tiny sword ladies. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't slap the two swords off. Godzilla's arms are very short. When he's standing upright, he won't be afraid of hitting his legs, so he has to bend down. Cheng-Ying, you are faster than the double Sword Mandarin Duck. You hide in the shadow of the twin swords. When Godzilla bends down, his buttocks will be exposed. This is your chance. Take the opportunity to cut a hole in his buttocks. This was what Gahan said to Cheng-Ying before the battle. When Godzilla bends down, his buttocks will naturally be exposed. The reason why Cheng-Ying was called Cheng-Ying was because her Confucian trait was that she could hide in all shadows. When the twin swords flew toward Godzilla, Cheng-Ying would hide in the shadow of the twin swords. This way, Godzilla wouldn't even notice Cheng-Ying's approach. When Godzilla lifted his foot to stomp the twin swords to death, the shadows of the twin swords and Godzilla's shadow merged perfectly. The shadow naturally shifted into Godzilla's shadow and quickly arrived behind Godzilla, where Godzilla's line of sight couldn't reach. The twin swords moved up Godzilla's legs. Cheng-Ying also moved up Godzilla's legs. However, Godzilla's attention was all on the twin swords. He didn't notice that Cheng-Ying had sneakily climbed up to his buttocks. Edgeless pain. Cheng-Ying smirked, and a faint blue light flashed on the blade. The Cheng-Ying sword in Cheng-Ying's hand immediately turned into a sword shadow. 3 seconds later, the sword shadow disappeared. Godzilla's buttocks, which was 10 square meters in size and 1 meter deep, was easily cut off by Cheng-Ying. Godzilla did not feel any pain at all. Basic skill, edgeless pain. For 5 seconds after using it, enemies who receive Cheng-Ying's attack won't feel any pain. However, the pain won't disappear. After 10 seconds, all the accumulated pain will erupt at the same time, instantly producing 10 times the normal pain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Godzilla, who didn't notice Cheng-Ying, was still trying to slap off the twin swords that were attached to his body. Suddenly, Godzilla's hand stopped. An indescribable pain suddenly rushed to Godzilla's brain. His originally red eyes instantly became like flames, and he let out a shrill scream. The pain was so intense that Godzilla couldn't control his skill. A scorching hot current sprayed out from his mouth. Everything that the current touched was melted into black slag. Its power was comparable to Jonaida's dragon flame. At the same time, because the pain came from Godzilla's buttocks, Godzilla almost completely lost his sense of balance. He staggered, his whole body leaned backward and fell to the ground. Godzilla's body is very heavy. Being able to walk upright is simply against the laws of physics. Therefore, if he wants to maintain his upright state, he must firmly maintain his center of gravity. Godzilla's center of gravity is on his buttocks. If his buttocks receive a fatal injury, he won't be able to maintain his upright state and will fall backward. Hanyu, it's time for you to act. Your target is Godzilla's eyes. Listen to my command and use your ultimate skill. Don't hesitate. Hanyu was a murderous sword mistress. She was born with the ability to conceal herself. Before the twin swords attracted Godzilla's attention, she had already followed Gohan's instructions and waited somewhere behind Godzilla. 30 seconds before Godzilla fell to the ground. Hanyu, use your ultimate skill. First, Madame Gongsun's sword dance. At that time, Hanyu was very confused because Hanyu was quite a distance away from Godzilla. If she used her ultimate skill, it would be impossible for her to hit Godzilla. However, Hanyu still obediently used her ultimate skill. In the air, illusions of Hanyu began to appear. 30 seconds later, Hanyu's illusions increased to 50. Godzilla fell to the ground. Hanyu was pleasantly surprised to find that her position was exactly where Godzilla's head had fallen to the ground. Without saying a word, the 50 illusions uniformly rushed toward Godzilla's crimson eyes. Godzilla, who had already fallen to the ground without any warning, did not expect that someone would be waiting for him. His eyes were wide open as he allowed the 50 illusions to rush into his eyes. As the saying goes, when a silver bottle is broken, the water splashes. When the iron cavalry charges, the sound of swords and spears. This Godzilla was undoubtedly blind. Chapter 156. This Meteor Yuan Ko-Godzilla didn't even have the time to attack its opponent. It didn't even have the chance to spit out a heat beam. Under Gohan's series of calculations, it was blinded. It was truly a tragedy. Without its eyes, the Godzilla had no way to resist the attacks of the 4 Sword Maidens. It could only let the 4 Sword Maidens kill it. The only difference was how long it took. Let's retreat. Just as all the Sword Maidens were preparing to work together to kill this Godzilla, Gohan's new order came. He actually told Cheng-Ying and the other Sword Maidens to retreat. It would only take a little time to kill this Godzilla. Why did they retreat? Cheng-Ying and the other Sword Maidens didn't understand. Just as they were about to ask, Gohan took the initiative to explain through their Sword Maidens. Killing this Godzilla is meaningless. On the contrary, it will waste a lot of time. We are currently avoiding the universe-level Yuan Ko, so the most important thing is to save time. This Godzilla's eyes are already blind. It's no threat to us. Let's retreat. Hearing Gohan's explanation, Cheng-Ying and the others blushed. They had been too successful in this battle. They had been so focused on getting rid of their enemies that they had forgotten the crux of the mission. It was this swordsman, called the Admiral, who had maintained the most basic level of calmness. After the battle ended, the Sword Maidens returned. Magic Pen dialed Steel Python's communicator and asked, "Steel Python, how's your situation?" "Captain, I found a river. I'll drive there immediately and hide the car. Then, I'll meet up with you guys and fight together," Steel Python said loudly through the communicator. From his hurried tone, it seemed like he was really anxious to come over and help. Unfortunately, he was destined to be of no help. "You haven't driven into the river yet, right? Hurry up and come back to pick us up." Magic Pen was really afraid that Steel Python would park the car in the river. Otherwise, it would take a lot of time to drive out of the river. "No, Captain, we don't want this raider anymore." "I understand. Captain, I'll be right back. You must hold on and wait for Steel Centipede to come and save you." "Save your head. Hurry up and come back. That Godzilla has already been killed." Hanyu forcefully interrupted the conversation between the Magic Pen and the Steel Centipede and attacked the Steel Centipede's face. What? What did Steel Centipede know? Hanyu is right. Steel Centipede, hurry up and drive the car back. Speaking up to this point, Clever Pen couldn't help but feel a bit regretful. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have let Steel Centipede drive the car away. If he waited for Steel Centipede to drive back, he would have wasted a few more minutes. After all, that universe-level Yuan Ko was still chasing after him. As soon as Steel Centipede's car returned, Gahan was the first to jump into the back of the car. Just as he had guessed, Steel Centipede didn't care about Artoria, who was lying in the back of the car. The back and forth jolted her to the position between the two seats, and she lay face down there. Gahan picked up Artoria and turned her over. He was surprised to find that the white wedding dress on Artoria's chest had turned black, and this black color gradually began to spread to the rest of the white parts. She will wake up soon. You need to be ready for battle. Hong Yu's voice suddenly sounded. This time, Hong Yu didn't sit in the second row with the Yu siblings. Instead, she sat in the last row, side by side with Gahan. Gahan didn't speak. He looked at the black wedding dress in a daze. Do you like her? Like our King Arthur, Miss Artoria? Very abruptly, Hong Yu asked such an awkward question for no reason. I don't know. Gahan raised his head and looked straight into Hong Yu's eyes. It's impossible that you don't know, Mr. Military Governor. Someone as calm and intelligent as you can't figure out your own thoughts? Or are you not willing to admit it? Hong Yu pressed on. I am indeed confused about my state, but I can confirm that I don't have the traditional love between a man and a woman for Artoria. Gahan's eyes were very clear. It's just that my body secretes some hormones that cause me to have some physiological reaction to Artoria. This reaction shouldn't have happened. Physiological reaction? Hong Yu's expression became somewhat ambiguous. Don't you want to be in perfect harmony with Artoria? To do something that makes love? You don't have to use such ambiguous word games, Hong Yu. To put it simply and seriously, I just want to make love. This is a male's instinct. I have the urge to mate with her. This time, Hong Yu was dumbfounded. This military governor looked like a mysterious, arrogant, and very cold man. How could his image collapse in an instant and say such vulgar words? And when he said this, he still had an innocent expression as if he was a very decent person. But she's just a pile of data. Don't tell me you want to do something to a bunch of electronic signals. Hong Yu's face turned red. Not really. Gahan focused and calmed himself down. I look forward to meeting her in reality. That way, some of the doubts in my heart can be solved. In reality, you may be disappointed. Since the battle, Artoria has not appeared in front of the world. Didn't the Sword Council already state on her information that she is suspected to be dead? The Sword Council's words can be trusted. Even a pig can be a sword bearer. Gahan said disdainfully. Artoria should be somewhere in reality. I will meet her sooner or later. Come on, Mr. Military Governor. Although you have grown very fast in the game and are already a sword bearer of the famed sword level, in reality, you probably aren't even a sword bearer. The mission to find Artoria is a little too early for you. You should think carefully about how to deal with this Artoria in your arms later. She has already started to change color. When the time comes, she will no longer have that vivacious vibe in your arms. This is the reason why your sect leader Yao Guang invited me here. Isn't the person in my arms the reason why you are always stuck at the 60% node? Let me correct you, Mr. Military Governor. It's us, Hong Yu said with a straight face. If you don't solve this problem, then we will always be stuck at 60% progress. Yes, as Gahan said, Artoria was the reason why the dungeon was stuck at 60% progress. Just like the smear of black on the pure white wedding dress that Gahan saw. Once the smear of black engulfed the entire wedding dress and turned the pure white wedding dress into a pure black wedding dress, Artoria would wake up from her coma. But at that time, Artoria would be a completely defiled Artoria. She was cold, heartless, and merciless. She attacked Magic Pen and the others who rescued her without mercy. Moreover, she was so powerful. The first time they faced Artoria, they were caught off guard. They only lasted for 3 minutes before they were all killed by Artoria. Only Hong Yu and one person escaped from the dungeon through the exit, but they failed the dungeon and all of them had a 3-day holiday. In the next dozen or so dungeon runs, Magic Pen and the others continued to make various preparations and came up with various battle plans to understand the various combat methods of the corrupted Artoria. Even though these methods had successfully delayed the battle to around 7 minutes. However, in the face of Dark Artoria with universe level or even universe level strength, all their plans were futile. They could only hold on for a little longer and leave the dungeon through the exit. The core reason why Yao Wang hired military governor as a strategy expert was that he hoped that Gahan could find a way to defeat Artoria or rescue her from her defiled state. Yes, it's us. Gahan nodded, agreeing with what Hong Yu said. Hong Yu wanted to say something, but she suddenly saw one of Guhan's hands suddenly grab the collar of Artoria's wedding dress and forcefully pull it down. Artoria's white wedding dress was completely torn by Gahan. Artoria's naked upper body, including a pair of snowflake buns, was exposed in front of Gahan and Hong Yu. What are you doing? Are you crazy? You pervert. Hong Yu jumped up in shock and shouted loudly. Everyone sitting in front couldn't help but look back. Then they saw Gahan holding Artoria's naked body with one hand and caressing Artoria's chest with the other. Pervert, pervert, I'm so jealous. All the little friends expressed that they were stunned. Close your eyes, you perverts. Hong Yu's hand shook, and a layer of illusion blocked the 4 people sitting in front from peeping at Artoria's body. What a pity, I only got a glimpse. White, Gunrun said. Chapter 157. Don't get too excited. I'm just doing some experiments. Guhan lowered his head and glanced at Artoria's infinitely beautiful body. Of course, the scenery here is also very good. Experiments? Military governor, what did you find? Magic Pen was probably the calmest of them all, and he really believed what Gahan said. He was the one who was doing experiments. Some very interesting discoveries, such as here. Gahan pointed at Artoria's chest where her heart was. There's a wound the width of 2 fingers here, and it seems like something has drilled into her wound. Everyone knew that a girl's heart was soft, so Gahan's finger rubbed on Artoria's big meat bun. It was a very satisfying feeling. Of course, Hong Yu was speechless. What do you mean? Magic Pen said in a deep voice. Do you suspect that the filth entered Artoria's body through this wound and controlled her to become evil? This is just a guess. I don't have any more information. Gahan helped Artoria put on her wedding dress. I still need more observations and experiments to confirm my guess. Are you going to take off all of Artoria's clothes and study her body? Hong Yu asked angrily. Of course not. Gahan shook his head and added, maybe in the future. Although there were some accidents on the way, before the first universe level, Yuan Ko caught up with Gahan and the others. They still rushed to the first safety point marked on the map. It was an underground air raid shelter built in an unknown era. Although the air raid shelter had been abandoned for many years, it still had all kinds of equipment. Not only did it have beds, furniture, electric lights, but there was also a generator, a refrigerator, a computer, a game console, fitness equipment, and a series of other props. In the back cave of the air raid shelter, there was even a lot of food and supplies stored. According to Magic Pen's research, this air raid shelter was one of the small secret strongholds used by Yanjing City to investigate Yuan Ko's movements and intelligence a few years ago. There were 3 to 5 sword bearers stationed here all year round to collect intelligence and detect Yuan Ko's movements. Their main task was to detect whether there was a large-scale gathering of Yuan Ko's forces. If there was, it meant that a new wave of attacks was about to begin, and Yanjing City had to be prepared to defend to the death. For some reason, this stronghold was abandoned a few years ago, but all kinds of equipment were still intact. The most important thing was that the crystal wall shield was still in a normal state. The crystal wall shield was different from the dimensional wall that protected the base city. It was a unique defense method for every stronghold in the wilderness. It could isolate all kinds of energy flow. The energy outside the shield could not enter, and the energy outside the shield could not flow out. This way, not only could this stronghold maintain a good living environment that was warm in the winter and cool in the summer, but it could also make all kinds of strange search magic, telekinesis, radar, and other methods of Yuan Ko ineffective. When Magic Pen reactivated the crystal wall shield, it meant that the U-level Yuan Ko, who was tracking Artoria, would lose his sense of Artoria, and the pursuit of Gahan and the others would be interrupted. Sure enough, when magic pens skillfully injected sword essence into the core of the crystal wall shield. A light blue layer of crystal wall shield enveloped the entire stronghold. System notification. The first level Yuan Ko who started the pursuit has lost his sense of Artoria. You are safe for the time being. However, please be careful. Yuan Ko is less than 50 kilometers away from you. He has already mobilized the surrounding Yuan Ko to search for you. You are at risk of being exposed at any time. The crystal wall shield can isolate long-distance energy communication, but it can't isolate Yuan Ko from searching with his naked eyes. Therefore, it is not safe for Gahan and the others to stay here. After a short rest, they must find a way to leave this place and get away from that level Yuan Ko. Sikong, as usual, go and fix that communication device. Magic Pen found a set of communication devices left here, but this set was the same as the one in Wudong Ju Zone. It was damaged and needed to be repaired. While Yu Sikong was repairing the communication device, Gahan looked at Artoria in his arms and sighed. This girl's white wedding dress was still pure white, and in about 10 minutes, it would completely turn black. At that time, a new battle would begin. Here, didn't you want to drink water? Han Yu handed a bottle of Laozhan white snake grass water to Gahan. This was a magical drink that made people feel as if they had reached the end of the world and the universe had exploded. It was said that before the apocalypse, this drink was voted as the most disgusting drink in China. Other than those who liked novelty, very few people were interested in Laozhan white snake grass water. Therefore, this drink didn't sell well and was on the verge of bankruptcy. However, with the beginning of the apocalypse and the appearance of the sword bearers, the scene changed dramatically. There was a sword wielder who was facing an attack from a Yuan Shun that was far more powerful than him. He was already on the verge of death when he found a bottle of Lao Mountain White Flower Snake grass water and drank it in one gulp. Therefore, the sword bearer's combat power instantly increased by 10 times and killed the powerful Yuan Ko with one strike. Well, those are just the manufacturer's advertisements. In terms of actual effects, the sword bearers all reported that after drinking the Laozhan White Flowered Snake grass water, they would be able to focus their attention and instantly change their mental energy. In short, it would make their entire body become excited, and their combat strength would more or less increase. Therefore, this Laozhan White Snake grass water became a must-have drink for the sword bearers in the wild. This small stronghold was no exception, and there were more or less a few bottles left. Thank you. Gahan took the bottle and drank in one gulp. He felt as if he was floating in the air. What a magical taste! Gahan held the bottle playfully, considering whether he should give some to Artoria. Along the way, she hadn't stopped craving water. I've fixed it. Yu Sikong walked to the door with the communication device. He inserted the antenna of the communication device through the crystal barrier so that the signal could be transmitted to Yanjing City. The first time he came to this stronghold, Yu Sikong had suffered from this. After activating the crystal barrier, he kept trying to contact Yanjing City, but he didn't receive any signal. After working for an hour, Han Yu reminded him that this crystal barrier not only blocked the search of the U-level Yuan Ko, but it also blocked the connection between the stronghold and the base city. Hello, is this Yanjing City? We are members of the Yaowang team. We have important information to report to the base city. Please let the higher-ups talk to us immediately. What office director? That's not enough. It has to be at least a member of the standing committee of the Sword Committee. Yes, we saved the U-level Yuan Ko, Artoria, one of the 10 kings of the Martyr's Palace. She was willing to surrender to us and provide us with a lot of valuable information. We are not crazy. This is the truth. We're currently in safe stronghold number 6524. We're safe for now, but there's another universe level Yuan Shun chasing after us. I'm requesting the headquarters to immediately send reinforcements. Yes, understood. Let's try. This was the 12th time Yu Sikong repeated this conversation. The base city didn't believe Yu Sitsong's words at all, and they weren't willing to send reinforcements. Especially after hearing that the U-level Yuan Ko was nearby, they rejected the rescue request even more. In the words of the base city, the only sword bearer in Yanjing was the cabinet master of the sword firmament. who couldn't leave. The other sword bearers were not in the city and couldn't be deployed. That was why Guhan and the others were confident that they could find a way to leave. However, the base city still gave Yusikon good news. They said that there was a small teleportation portal 15 kilometers northwest of Stronghold 6524. It was a portal used by the Western Temple to transfer Yuan-Ko. During the previous investigation, the sword bearers had found it and recorded the information. The teleportation portal was used by the Western Temple to transfer troops quickly. They had set up many such portals in various parts of the world, so they could quickly transfer troops all over the world. However, this teleportation portal wasn't only used by the Western Temple's Yuan-Ko, but also by the sword bearers. Gohan and the others could use this portal to teleport to other places thousands of kilometers away. In short, it was the best way to escape from the U-level Yuan-Ko. It was also the only way. System notification, Mission 7. Escape from the pursuit completed. You have reached the first safe point and contacted Yanjing City. You have obtained a way to escape from the pursuit. Dungeon completion rate, 60%. System notification, Mission 8. Go through the small teleportation portal. Go through the small teleportation portal to the next safe point. Please note that Yuan-Ko has set up a protective force near the teleportation portal. Please do not get entangled with them. Special reminder. It is recommended to confirm King Arthur's status before you leave. Everyone, let's release the Sword Maidens again. It's time again. Magic Pen was the first to release the Sword Maidens, followed by Yusikong, UCU, Hongyu, and Steel Melamine Bomb. They formed a circle and surrounded Gahan and Artoria. Military Governor, don't waste time. The most brutal battle is about to begin, Magic Pen said in a deep voice. I understand. Gohan nodded. He put down Artoria and held the King Yu sword tightly in his hand. At this moment, Artoria's wedding dress was completely black. It was just like her pupils that suddenly opened. Chapter 158. Master. Magic Pen's team has already come out of King Arthur's betrayal. Tai Peng, the person in charge of intelligence for Yao Wang's sword faction who had appeared in Chapter 27, hurried to Yao Wang's side and slowly reported the latest information. Yao Wang hung up the call on his personal terminal. I know. I just hung up the call with Magic Pen. I know the situation of this clearing. You don't need to waste time. Just repeat it to me. Yao Wang waved his hand. Tell me, what's the situation with Nine State Sword Faction and Hung Mountain Sword Faction? Yes. According to our insider information, Nine State Sword Faction and Hung Mountain Sword Faction are like us, still stuck at the 60% progress bar. However, I heard that Nine State Sword Faction invited Watermelon Gentleman, who ranked first in the list of famous swords, virtual list, to join the clearers. It was said that the first time they besieged the corrupted Artoria, they fought for a full 30 minutes and took away 40% of her HP. That's twice our team's HP. Tai Peng's eyes shone. Master, Steel Mang told everyone that this military governor is capable, but he doesn't know how to command. From the beginning to the end, it was Magic Pen who commanded. We paid such a high price and used a sword mark crystal worth tens of millions to give to him. Will this deal? That's not something you should be concerned about. Yao Wang threw a book in his hand to Tai Peng. Go, put him in the sect's treasury. The sect's treasury was a building that every sect must have. There were many good things in the game stored inside. However, these things were not refreshed by the game itself. Instead, they were placed there by the management to reward their own sect members. By completing various sect quests or helping the sect achieve certain achievements that would increase their reputation, they could obtain some sect contribution points. These contribution points could be used to exchange for various items in the sect's treasury. This was one of the benefits of the sect. This is? Tai Peng took the book and looked at it. The words Heaven Reliant Sword were written on it. Strange. When did Sect Master get the token of Heaven Reliant Sword? Why do you want me to put it in the sect's treasury? Tai Mang shook his head in confusion. Sect Leader, how many sect contribution points is this book worth? Tai Mang chased after Yao Wang and asked. That's quite a lot. Just set it at 1 million sect contribution points. Ha ha ha. Yao Guang laughed and left, leaving behind a confused Taiping. 1 million SEK contribution points? My Emperor Sword of Firmament. This should be the most expensive thing in the treasury. The problem was, this was merely a treasure sword-level keepsake, and it wasn't even a complete set. Even if she was number 1 in the treasure sword level, it wouldn't be worth more than 1 million. Lord Magic Brush has only accumulated less than 600,000, right? Is there anyone who can exchange for this token? Boss Military Governor, add me as a friend. I'm very strong. Boss Military Governor, add me as a friend. I have a younger sister who adores you. She really wants to meet you. Boss Military Governor, do you need a leg pendant? I'm a super leg pendant that adds 100 points of luck. After exiting the instance dungeon, a series of messages flooded Gohan's screen. After joining Yao Guang's sword sect, a large sword sect chat channel appeared at the bottom of his line of sight. A series of golden words with the words Military Governor continuously refreshed Gohan's sect chat channel. It was like Tetris at 100 times the normal speed. Naturally, Gohan wasn't interested in these private messages. However, after receiving so many benefits from Yao Guang, not saying a word would make him look unprofessional. Thus, Gohan typed in the sect chat channel, "Thank you for your concern, everyone. I'm very busy right now and don't have time to answer your questions. Please don't at me anymore. Thank you, everyone." Then, he turned off the sect chat channel. Out of sight, out of mind. That message was quickly refreshed like a sea. God knew how many people saw Gohan's message. The battle with the defiled Artoria before leaving the instance dungeon had exhausted Gohan from head to toe. After the instance dungeon, many things had accumulated in Gohan's mind. The fire that was seduced by Artoria had exhausted Gohan. He didn't want to stay in the game anymore. He wanted to return to reality to rest. Right, it seemed that Yuzhong University had classes tomorrow. Gohan had to go. Every Yuzhong University class was extremely important, and he couldn't miss it. Therefore, Gohan sent a message to Magic Pen and Yao Guang, explaining that he had something urgent to do tomorrow and couldn't participate in the instance dungeon raid. After that, he clicked on the exit interface and prepared to leave the game. Suddenly, a call came in. Gohan looked at it and saw that it was from Yao Guang. "Hello, is this Mr. Military Governor? I've heard about the situation in the instance dungeon from Magic Pen. Thanks to Mr. Military Governor's excellent performance, the battle this time lasted 15 minutes longer than the last time. Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Military Governor. You're welcome. I'm just doing my part. Besides, this is just an experiment. If there are no accidents, the next time I'll be able to pass 60%. Is that so? Then Yao Guang thanks Mr. Military Governor in advance. I'll wait for Mr. Military Governor's good news." At this point, Yao Guang paused. "Right, since this is your first day in our Yao Guang sword sect, Mr. Military Governor, you should take a look around and explore more. Especially our sect's treasury. There are many rare treasures. Maybe there's something that Military Governor wants. Here are some sect contribution points. Mr. Military Governor, don't be shy. Take them and use them. You can exchange them for anything you want." After saying that, Yao Guang hung up the call. Gohan could hear hurried footsteps coming from beside Yao Guang. It seemed that someone was looking for Yao Guang. System notification. Your sect master Yao Guang has given you 1 million sect contribution points. You can use the sect contribution points to use in the sect. He actually gave 1 million. Gohan once again expressed his admiration for Yao Guang's generosity. This was 1 million sect contribution points. Ordinary sect members would only accumulate tens of thousands of points after working hard for their entire lives. Yao Guang had given him 1 million in one go. Was he not afraid that he would empty out the sect's treasury? Gohan shook his head. Since it was already in his hands, he would go to the sect's treasury to see if there were any treasures worth exchanging for. The Yao Guang Sword Sect's treasury was in the Yao Guang Sword Sect's encampment, Chicago. Gohan used the quantum teleportation gate to teleport to the encampment. In order not to attract any trouble, Gohan specially wore a hat so that the scar on his face would not be so eye-catching. In the encampment, members of the Yao Guang Sword Sect came and went in a hurry. No one noticed Gohan wearing a hat. Very smoothly, Gahan arrived at the sect's treasury. As this was originally the University of Chicago's gymnasium, the interior of the gymnasium was filled with all sorts of treasures. Non-management personnel were not allowed to enter. Ordinary members could browse through the list of treasures on the hundreds of computers in the service area and use their sect contribution points to exchange for the items they wanted. Once the exchange was confirmed, there would be robots that would automatically deliver the item to their hands. It was very convenient. At this moment, there were not many people in the service area. There were dozens of empty computers. Gahan randomly found one and sat down. He opened up the list of treasures and set the order to go from highest to lowest. A long list of items appeared. Looking at the numbers, there were over 30,000 different items placed in the sect's treasury. The first item was the inherent barrier, Yama Palace, which was worth 800,000 sect contribution points. Looking at the item's description, this was a powerful barrier that could cause the murderous Path Sword Mistress to fear the enemy's attacks. It was no wonder that it was ranked first in the treasury, worth 800,000 sect contribution points. Gahan noticed that the contributor to this barrier was Sect Master Yaoguang. For a moment, Gahan was a little tempted. He wanted to use 800,000 sect contribution points to exchange for this barrier. However, Gahan still held back because there was no murderous Path Sword Mistress in the list that Gahan planned for himself. Moreover, the murderous path was an unconventional path after all. Those Jindi who had a tragic ending were mostly Jindi who had the murderous path Emperor's Sword. The second item worth 600,000 sect contribution points was a set of spiritual sword level tokens. That's right, it was a set of spiritual sword mistress tokens, a set of 10. Although it was only a spiritual sword mistress that was ranked at the bottom of the spiritual sword record, if such a set of tokens was put on the auction house, it would be impossible to get it without at least 15 or 16 million sect contribution points. Seeing that the contributor to this set of tokens was Lan Sangjiang, Gahan suddenly understood. This Lan Sangjiang was said to have experimented with no less than 20 sets of spirit sword level tokens, but all of them were unsuccessful. The remaining set in his hand was given to the sect as a reward. This was not a strange thing. He had too much money, so his balls hurt. In fact, ever since this set of tokens was placed in the sect's treasury, the news spread like wildfire. At least thousands of famous spiritual sword level sword bearers joined the Yaoguang sword sect for this set of tokens, hoping that one day they could accumulate enough sect contribution points to exchange for this set of tokens. Collecting a set of spiritual sword level tokens was really too painful. How many people could not collect a set of tokens in their lifetime? Unfortunately, Gahan simply did not fancy this spiritual sword mistress. Otherwise, those famous spiritual sword level sword bearers who ran around all day long for this set of tokens would be greatly disappointed. Gahan looked down at some other things, but there were no treasures that were worthy of his attention. Gahan was thinking that he might as well exchange it for some sword scar crystals or sword essence pills. Suddenly, the entire screen refreshed a bit, and a notification popped up. A new item had been added to the treasury. At the same time, the menu that had been pulled down to the back was refreshed back to the top. The words Heavenly Sword Secret Manual is worth 1 million sect contribution points. Contributor, Iron Centipede, deeply pierced into Gahan's eyes, making Gahan speechless for a long time. Do you want to sell a personal favor to me? Gahan smiled. A spiritual sword level token is worth at most 100,000, and you actually have a nerve to set it at 1 million sect contribution points. Aren't you afraid that I'll exchange it for your inherent barrier? Yaoguang, oh Yaoguang, you really think highly of me, Gahan. Without any hesitation, Gahan decisively clicked on the exchange button for the Heavenly Sword's Secret Manual. 1 million sect contribution points came and went quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was exchanged for a Heavenly Sword's token, which was then sent to Gahan's hands by a robot. It happened so quickly that no one in the sect realized that an item worth 1 million gold coins had appeared in the treasury and was instantly exchanged for it. Wait, Gahan, who was about to log off, suddenly froze. How did Yaoguang know that I wanted the Heavenly Sword's Secret Manual? In his eyes, I should already be a famous spiritual sword-level sword-bearer. Yawang, oh Yawang, I, Gahan, think highly of you. Chapter 159. When Gahan woke up from his sleep, he felt something soft on his face. There was also a magical smell that rushed into Gahan's mouth and nose. When he opened his eyes, he saw a small, but wrapped in a blue and white striped cotton underwear. It just happened to sit on Gahan's face. Gahan was actually drugged and raped. Qingpin, you've gone too far. Once again, he grabbed Qingpin's neck and turned her to face him. Sure enough, this cute girl was still dreaming. There was a drop of sparkling saliva hanging from the corner of her mouth. Accidentally, this droplet of saliva dripped into Gahan's mouth. I'm too lazy to care about you. Gahan threw Qingpin back on the bed. He found that the clothes on his lower abdomen were wet. It was probably caused by Qingpin's saliva. Gahan shook his head and opened his wardrobe. He planned to change clothes for himself. However, he was surprised to find that the wardrobe that originally contained underwear had been replaced with socks and underwear. Gahan opened a few more wardrobes, but he didn't find any underwear. Maiden, where's my underwear? Gahan shouted unhappily at the living room. Maiden quickly ran in. When she saw that Gahan was looking for clothes, she apologized repeatedly. I'm sorry, master. Your wardrobe is too messy. Maiden took advantage of the time when you were playing games to tidy it up for you. Forget it. Find my underwear. Gahan knew that Maiden was just fulfilling her duty, so he didn't say anything more to Maiden. Yes, master. Maiden has put all your undergarments into the wardrobe below. As she spoke, Maiden bent down and opened the clothes below to look for undergarments for Gahan. As a result, this posture caused Maiden's maid dress to be affected by gravity, and it very naturally slid down. The full buttocks that were wrapped in black lace also naturally fell into Gahan's eyes. In an instant, Gahan thought back to the instance dungeon. When Artoria was restrained, her lower body was raised. Suddenly, a certain part of her body stood up. Then, an urge to push down Maiden in front of him and wantonly humiliate her almost made Gahan instantly transform into a demon. Damn it, what's wrong with this body? Gahan used a lot of willpower to suppress that impulse. At this time, when Maiden finally found Gahan's underwear, she turned around and handed it to Gahan. That's strange. The moment when Maiden turned around, she seemed to feel something hard hitting her, but when Maiden subconsciously looked down and saw Gahan's protruding object. When she looked up again, she saw his wet clothes. She seemed to understand something immediately. When Maiden covered her mouth, she raised her head and saw Gahan's lustful eyes. When Maiden's body trembled, and she sighed her heart. Taking the initiative to make their master feel happy, taking the initiative to satisfy all the master's mental and physical needs was the fate of an exclusive maid. Since she had chosen this path, she could not refuse it, nor could she turn back. When Maiden knelt down in front of Gahan, she stretched out one hand and wanted to take off Gahan's pants. Taking the initiative to obey was also one of the rules of exclusive maids. Instead of letting Gahan urge and order her, it was better to take the initiative and squeeze out that thing earlier. Perhaps her master would be able to stop the desire on his mouth. What are you doing? When Maiden's hand touched Gahan's pants, Gahan seemed to be struggling in a nightmare. Almost in an instant, his whole body became drenched in sweat. His clothes seemed to have been soaked in water, stained with sweat, and became wet. Leave the clothes here, you go. Gahan said such words like a beast. When Maiden was shocked and scrambled out of Gahan's bedroom. Gahan, what's wrong with you? Qingpin, who was only wearing underwear, rubbed his eyes and stood up from the bed. With a precise jump, he jumped into Gahan's arms. A cool air poured from Gahan's chest into Gahan's limbs. The beast-like desire was instantly suppressed by this cool air. Gahan also woke up from the nightmare. Qingpin, thank you. Gahan hugged Qingpin tightly in his arms and fiercely rubbed against him. If it wasn't for Qingpin just now, Gahan would have suspected that he was going to turn into a beast. It hurts, stinky Gahan, you're hurting Qingpin. Guhan's mysterious ancestor left 3 secret manuals for Guhan. Everyone knew about the first one. It was the 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven, which was commonly used for freezing cold. The sword technique in this secret manual had already been practiced to the point of perfection. It had reached a higher level and was exquisite. This was also the foundation of Guhan's ability. The second one was known to everyone in the previous chapters. It was called 3 Green Lotus Swords. It was the sword technique that Guhan was currently practicing. Although 3 Green Lotus Swords was 3 times less than 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven, its power was more than 3 times stronger than 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven. Once Guhan mastered it, as long as he had enough sword essence, he estimated that he could use 3 Green Lotus Swords to fight all sword bearers below the Emperor's sword level without a problem. Even Emperor's sword-level sword bearers might have a fighting chance. However, 3 Green Lotus Swords was far more difficult than 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven. Guhan only spent 7 years to master 9 Swords of Mysterious Heaven. However, 5 years had passed since then, and he hadn't even finished practicing the general principle of the 3 Swords of Green Lotus once. More than half of the acupuncture points were still unable to be broken through. This situation changed after Guhan became the sword holder. With the increasing amount of sword essences, Guhan had more and more sword essences to break through these meridians. Some of the meridians that he couldn't break through in the past had also been forcibly broken through. Seeing that Guhan was about to master the general mental cultivation method of the 3 Green Lotus Sword style, when he was about to reach the entry level of the sword art, the problem of his body being unable to control his desire appeared. Yes, Guhan suspected that the reason why his body was in such a situation when he was facing Artoria and when Maiden was because his 3 Green Lotus Swords was getting more and more profound. The sword technique 3 Green Lotus Swords was very clear. Green Lotus Hellfire, Hellfire Green Lotus. Hellfire rages, heart springs boil. Hellfire is not extinguished, sword technique is not complete. It seemed that if he wanted to master Green Lotus Swords, there would be Hellfire. But if he did not extinguish the Hellfire, he would not be able to master the sword technique. This was really a contradictory proposition. Today was the second day of class for Guhan, Songhama, and the others. Songhama had been waiting for Guhan at the entrance of Yuzhong University. Of course, he was not tired. He was held in Cast Cloud Iron's arms, enjoying the warmth. But it was not until the class was about to start that Guhan rushed over, feeling a little tired. Toad's song, Sister Cast Cloud Iron. Hello. The first person to greet them was not Guhan, but Qingpin, who was in the infant pouch on his chest. She waved her little hands and greeted Songhama and Cast Cloud Iron. After Guhan fainted in the battle and was admitted to the hospital, Songhama, Fleeting Time Lin, and their Lady of the Sword played with Penniless Sword for a long time. They even brought Penniless Sword out for a meal at Chanel. Thus, Penniless Sword became familiar with Songhama and the Cloudcast Steel. Qingpin, you have become cuter again. Songhama stretched out a hand, wanting to touch Qingpin's little face, but Qingpin's head shrunk back and hid in the pouch. Other than Guhan, no one is allowed to touch Qingpin's head. This made Songhama feel very awkward. Ignore her. She's just throwing a tantrum. Guhan laughed. His words dissolved Songhama's awkwardness. Sour Popsicle, there's something wrong with your face. Didn't you sleep well last night? Songhama smiled wretchedly and poked Guhan's waist. Hey, did you get squeezed too much by your personal maid last night? Songhama's words did not make Guhan angry or embarrassed. Instead, it made another person unhappy. She patted Songhama's head and asked stiffly, Dear friend, do you want to be squeezed too? Do you want Cast Cloud Iron to help you? Hee hee, just kidding, just kidding. Songhama immediately gave up. With Cast Cloud Iron and Songhama's entire family around, Songhama's personal maid was very comfortable and safe. She did not have to worry about her chastity. However, it was said that Songhama's personal maid was not very happy about this. She felt that this deprived her of the opportunity to soar in the sky and become a phoenix, successfully changing from a personal maid to a mistress. Everyone has their own thoughts and pursuits. We cannot use the moral high ground to make irresponsible remarks. Gohan and Songhama talked to each other as they arrived at the classroom. After a while, the form teacher, Luo Fan, also entered the classroom. However, when Luo Fan arrived, Liuyan Ling, one of the three people from before, did not appear in the classroom. Ahem, Ao Lin has something to attend to today. She won't be able to attend class today. She has applied for leave from me, so there will only be 29 students in class today. Luo Fan's first sentence made it clear that Fleeting Cold would not be able to attend class. Regarding this, the students began to discuss. Asking for leave on the second class of the semester, this Ao Lin was really arrogant. However, when they thought about how she was already a sword wielder and possessed such a powerful Tianwen sword, such an arrogant reason seemed to be very normal. Even the form teacher was only a sword wielder. How much restraint could such a class have on Ao Lin? Although the rules of this world were strict, geniuses could always be treated with tolerance. Regarding Ao Lin's absence, Gohan expressed that he was very happy. After all, he still owed her 3 million. The income from yesterday's strategy post had plummeted to less than 200,000. After returning the 7 million to the school's hospital, Gohan's accumulated savings were less than 2 million. He really could not return Liuyan Ling's fees in such a short period of time. At the same time, the form teacher, Luo Fan, stood on the podium and said the main topic of this class. Today, we will learn how to leave a deep sword mark. Chapter 160. As we all know, after a sword maiden is synchronized, it's a one-time deal. There's basically no possibility of a replacement, unless you can get your hands on a peerless divine item like the green silk cutter. Luo Fan said on the podium, his spittle flying everywhere. Then, after a sword maiden is synchronized, is there any way to further improve the sword maiden's strength? Of course there is. Luo Fan slammed the table fiercely, expressing his imposing manner. The method is to use deep sword scars. From rank 9 to rank 1. As the sword scars deepen, the sword maiden's strength will continue to increase. It's even possible for her to be on par with a sword maiden of a higher level. Sword scars are sword-shaped creations produced in the sword maiden's body after the sword maiden and the sword wielder are synchronized. Under the control of the sword wielder, it can travel between the sword maiden and the sword wielder's body. Through the sword scars, the sword maiden can be commanded, contacted, and so on. I believe everyone understands this very well, so I won't explain further. The so-called deep sword scars is to strengthen the sword maiden's body and abilities with the power of the sword maiden, which is represented by the sword scars, so that the sword maiden can be more powerful. There are many benefits to deep sword scars. First, after deep sword scars, the sword maiden's basic attributes such as attack, defense, and agility can be increased so that the attack power of 100 quarks of sword essence will be greater, the energy of the defensive shield will be greater, and the dodging ability will be higher. Second, after deep sword scars, the sword maiden's physical fitness will be improved by a considerable amount. For example, if a sword maiden without deep sword scars can lift a motorcycle, then a sword maiden with deep sword scars of rank 1 will be able to lift an SUV. According to experimental calculations, each deep sword scars can improve the original basic physical fitness by another 20%. Don't underestimate this 20%. After 9 deep sword scars and reaching the limit of rank 1, compared to the original physical fitness without deep sword scars, the original physical fitness will be improved by a full 5 times. This is almost like a complete transformation. Third, every 3 deep sword scars can activate the skills contained in the sword maiden's body. All of you who play Sword Maiden Online know that in the game, there are 4 skills: basic skills, passive skills, advanced skills, and ultimate skills. It was the same in real life. Sword Maiden also had 4 skills. However, they can only use the weakest of their basic skills. As they continue to deepen their mastery, their skills will also be unlocked. Once they unlock their ultimate skills, the power of the sword Maiden will become extremely terrifying. For example, my teacher's blazing brilliant sword. Once it reaches the first rank, it will unlock a powerful ultimate skill, Son of Heaven's Death. TSK. After using this skill, Blazing Brilliance will be immune to all debuff skills. All attack power will be increased by 200%, and durability will be maintained at 5%. The sword mistresses of the surrounding party members will also be able to increase their skills by 30%, and similarly, their durability will be maintained at 5%. No matter how bad the situation is, as long as Lai Wang uses the death of the Son of Heaven in state, it is possible to reverse the entire situation in one fell swoop and eliminate all the enemies. Luo Fan said proudly. Teacher, your Empress Lai Huang is so powerful. May I ask if Empress Lai Huang has already unlocked her ultimate skill? In the classroom, a student raised his hand and asked, Well, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. A drop of sweat appeared on Luo Fan's forehead. It was not as simple as just a little bit more. Forget about the ultimate skill. Even if it was an advanced skill, his blazing brilliance had not been unlocked in time. Cough, cough. Next, I will talk about the method of deep sword scars. This is also the most important part of this lesson. Now, everyone, stand up and follow me to the cultivation classroom. The cultivation classroom was very big and very spacious. There was nothing inside, only mattress-sized cushions on the ground. Counting them, there were exactly 30 of them, one for each student, so it was perfectly fine. Now, I will explain to you how to deep sword scars. However, I need a student to cooperate with me. Is there anyone who is willing to cooperate with me? Luo Fan asked with a smile. Many students who were diligent in their studies raised their hands. However, Luo Fan's eyes did not even stop on them. He directly looked at Gahan, who was hiding at the back without saying a word. That last student, I see that you are not enthusiastic. How can this be? Come over to me and help me demonstrate the process of deep sword scars. Luo Fan definitely called out Gahan's name on purpose. He still had a deep grudge against Gahan for scamming him of more than 80,000 at Chanel. Since Gahan's name was called out, Gahan did not hesitate and directly walked to Luo Fan's side. Anyway, Gahan had already memorized the method and process of deep sword scars in real life. He was very experienced. Even if Luo Fan tried to play some tricks, Gahan was not afraid of him. Student Gahan, sit here. And your sword lady, cute Lady Qingpin, don't always stay in Student Gahan's pocket. Come out more often. Come, Qingpin sword lady, sit opposite Student Gahan. Try to be as close to Student Gahan as possible. Students, don't laugh. This distance is very important. Don't let the sword lady be too far away from your body. This is because there is a distance limit when you control the sword scars. Once the distance is too far, the sword lady will not be able to cooperate with you, and you will be in trouble. Yes, very good. Student Gahan, Lady Qingpin, this is the distance. Student Gahan, then close your eyes and communicate with the sword scars in your purple mansion. When he asked Gahan to close his eyes and communicate with the sword scars, Luo Fan took out a small transparent bottle from his pocket. There was some powder inside. Students, this is the sword scars powder. Everyone is familiar with it. You should have it in the game and use it to make deep sword scars. However, the method of making deep sword scars in the game is simplified. You just need to throw the powder into your mouth and wait for the system to automatically make deep sword scars. But in reality, it is far more complicated than that. This is a set of meticulous work. However, the first step is the same. Student Gahan, please pour this bottle of powder into your mouth. Then, use your sword element to wrap this powder and transfer it to your purple mansion. This process must be done carefully. Don't be impatient. The sword scars powder wrapped by the sword element is as fragile as a bubble. If you're not careful, the powder will break and leak out. Young man, you can't get a wife if you are careless. Ha ha ha. The students laughed. Unfortunately, Gahan was not affected at all. Guhan had terrifying control over his sword element. Without any hesitation, He quickly wrapped his own sword essence around the sword mark dust and almost ran all the way to his Zifu. Without waiting for Luo Fan to say anything, he directly let the ball of sword essence wrapped in the sword mark dust collide with the sword mark. Student Gahan, don't be nervous. Listen to my instructions and slowly spread the sword scars powder evenly on the sword scars powder. Wait for about 30 seconds, and the sword scars powder will slowly become solid. Everyone's sword ladies are ancient sword grade, and this is their first time making deep sword scars. Therefore, 1 bottle of sword scars powder will be enough for your sword scars powder to become solid, unlike treasured swords. You will need 5 bottles of sword scars powder to become solid, Luo Fan said confidently. However, a minute passed, and there was no reaction from Gahan. Student Gahan, what happened? Luo Fan smiled in satisfaction. Is it because you were too careless and did not wrap the sword element tightly, causing the sword scars powder to leak out? Yes. Gahan blushed. I missed it. Teacher, can you give me another bottle of sword element powder? Hey, young man, I told you not to be careless. Why didn't you listen? Luo Fan criticized Gahan, but he still took out a new bottle of sword element powder and handed it to Gahan. As a result, Gahan did not say anything and directly poured it into his mouth. A minute later, Gahan blushed again. He opened his eyes and continued to ask Luo Fan for more sword scars powder. Student Gahan, you are too careless. Normally, our students will succeed on the second try. You actually failed again. If you fail again, teacher will give you a failing grade. Luo Fan smiled and gave Gahan another bottle. In the end, Gahan still failed on the third try. Luo Fan mocked him happily. This was the reason why Luo Fan wanted Gahan to be his prop and be the first to make deep sword scars. According to Luo Fan's experience in class, the students who acted as his props were habitually nervous. It was very normal for things that could be done once or twice to be dragged out to 3 or 4 times. Luo Fan wanted to take this opportunity to make Gahan lose face. Well, compared to Li Xian's methods, Luo Fan's revenge was still considered a kind person. He only wanted to make Gahan fail a few more times so that he could criticize and ridicule him. In essence, there was no real harm to Gahan. Luo Fan gave him another bottle. This was the 4th bottle of sword scars powder that Gahan had used. However, this time Gahan still failed. The 5th time he still failed. The 6th time he still failed. The 7th time he failed. The 8th time he failed. The 9th time he failed. By the 9th time, Luo Fan could no longer ridicule him. It was not difficult to use sword essence to wrap the sword scars powder. It was just like riding a bicycle. The first time might be difficult, but once you rode it a few times, it would be as easy as walking. Anyone who could become a sword bearer was not an idiot. The stupidest student that Luo Fan had ever taught could only succeed after 5 or 6 tries. However, someone like Gahan, who had failed after 9 tries, was absolutely unique. Something was wrong. What had happened in Gahan's purple palace? Luo Fan thought silently as he quietly waited for the result of Gahan's 10th try. Success! Gahan let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally succeeded. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.